Thank you for watching Fireside. If you enjoyed this podcast, consider liking and subscribing to be notified when future episodes release. Enjoy. Hello and welcome to another episode of Fireside. Today, I have a very special guest with me, the first of their kind, almost, someone who sits between realms, so to say, both of the old school and RuneScape 3 variety, someone I've been aware of for a long time, so I'm very happy to finally sit down virtually and have a conversation. Maikeru, welcome.
Hello.
There we go. Yep, there we go.
That was some mighty fine words for an intro. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no worries. No, I'm happy to have you, honestly. I want to quickly just start this off by saying, just give some very bizarre background on myself, but you are related in a weird way. So when I got into old school RuneScape, this was in like February of last year, I was searching up videos of like new player experiences, new player guides, all that kind of stuff. And I stumbled upon your series, I believe it was around that time. And I watched it, and that's how I got invited to your clan. So I get some comments are like, why are you in the RS3 Refugees clan? And I'm like, listen, it's a long story. So I just want to say it's nice to have someone I've been watching in a weird way more than like everyone else, or the progenitor of my old school RuneScape kind of career, if you could say that.
Yeah, it's cool. And I watch your videos at times, and I see like people from the clan, like when you put some B-roll in there of like Cox or something, and there's like mini Philip, mini Elliot, mini Philip, a bunch of other boys from the clan and stuff, and I just see their like names on there. I'm like, oh, he's doing raids with the clan. That's cool.
Yeah. Oh, that for sure.
It's just fun to see that like in action, you know.
Shout out to Mini Philip.
I'm glad. Yeah, he's a lovely guy. I'm glad the clan is helpful and it's been a fun place for you to hang out. I do most of my PVM with clannies and stuff as well, especially on my like new main account. All my raids and stuff are all with clannies. It's just really nice environment there.
For sure. And I'm sorry, I think I cut you off there by shouting out Mini Philip. What were you going to say before that?
No, I think that was pretty much it. It's all good.
All right, cool. Well, listen, so it's very cool to have you. So I want to, before we even jump into some of the topics that we had like lined up, people might not be aware, depending on when this releases, but we are releasing this a day after a pretty major announcement for RuneScape 3, and that's the announcement of a poll to remove Treasure Hunter. So I just want to get your take on this MTX-shaped elephant in the room.
It's at 96,000 votes out of 100K, and it's been like 27 hours or something. So it's safe to say that it'll definitely pass, and they'll remove Treasure Hunter and a bunch of the big MTX stuff that comes alongside it. They let people keep the items that they've already gained, but none of it will be for sale ever again type deal. And then if it's like a skilling outfit that isn't already accessible with in-game means, they'll with the year-long thing they're going to be introducing after removing it, it's like a health for the game, improvements, etc. for like a whole year. They're going to be like adding those things that were Treasure Hunter only to the game, because for people who don't know, with like RuneScape 3, it's kind of like old school where you can get outfits through different mini games or skilling and stuff like that. But there's some outfits that were just Treasure Hunter, which is very dumb and obviously part of the problem. But they're going to then introduce those within in-game meads to obtain them. So if someone doesn't have it, they will still be able to get it. Anything that is like game-breaking MTX items, like dummies and things like that, which give you XP for doing nothing, those are just never going to be able to be obtained again, which is how it should be.
100%. And so your general take, if I'm understanding correctly, is a positive one. Like you're happy with this, obviously this whole ordeal.
Oh yeah, 100%. I mean, I was a full-time RS3 creator for 7 years, and then I've been doing old school for the past like 2, but I've still been bouncing back to RS3, like the recent RuneScape 3 Leagues that you also played.
Mm-hmm.
I streamed a bunch of that, had a great time with that, and now I'm back on my chunk man on old school and stuff. So it's been fun to bounce between, and I think everyone who still plays RS3 or anyone who comes over to RS3 will say that the issues they are looking to fix as well as the removal from MTX is only a good thing. I doubt there's anyone that will be arguing against it. And if there is, it's just maybe like the one or two whales that they might have had that spent all of their money on keys or whatever, you know?
Yeah, there was an interesting thing. Jagex released for RuneScape 3, they released this insight into those experiments. And for those that don't know, who only maybe play old school RuneScape or otherwise, they had these experiments run one per month, I want to say, for a couple of weeks every month, that tested out what the game could look like in the future with some changes to the MTX, right? They ran one where like all the cosmetics were, there was a cosmetic free world. They ran one without like certain items from the treasure hunter. They ran one, I believe, with just cosmetics on a cash shop. And then they released a lot of like insight into how players felt based on the survey that they released after those experiments. And it was very interesting insight, right? Because on one hand, I totally agree with everything you said. On the other hand, I don't want to say surprised, but I guess in some ways a little bit disheartened to see how many people in the RS3 community still kind of are fervently kind of in support of some level of XP boosters and all that kind of stuff in their game. And I want to hear your like take on that, because it is weird to me. It's as a result of just that's the only thing a lot of players know. Like everyone else who really hates the stuff already quit. So the people that stayed are probably okay with it or more okay with it. But I'd like to hear your perspective, because you can speak to both the old school and the RS3 side of things.
Yeah, it's also only the data from the people that obviously answered the polls. So that doesn't even account for anyone who's already quit because of X, Y, and Z
Yeah.
MTX that might come back and try the next leagues or, whatever. They might do a new skill, and like coming back, then seeing all of these changes and no MTX means they might stay because of that. I know a lot of players that are, like 200 mil all, or they just maxed, or 120s, or whatever it is. They get to a point where they feel like they've done everything and they just stop playing and they come back for whatever happening. So those people wouldn't even have answered the poll, even though they're against it, right?
Yeah,
But a lot
exactly.
of the a lot of the questions were kind of worded in a weird way, because there's a lot of questions with that. I'll quickly pull it up and I'll talk about it, because I remember speaking about it to some friends and things, and they gave a bunch of statistics and percentages of different things. So it's like 68% of players felt positive or neutral about treasure hunter removal, 35% being negative. I feel like I took the poll myself, and there was no direct question with, are you happy it's gone? Or like, would you be happy of it being removed, etc. Right?
Mhm.
Um, so the poll was worded in a way that it's like, um, would you like these things from it or whatever? And if you voted yes on like any of the MTX side of things, then they class that as being like negative, I think. So their data is definitely a little bit skewed in some of those, I feel. Um, but like, for example, there is a statistic where it was like 50% of people wanted some sort of way to speed up their progress. And I think that does speak true to a lot of current players, because they enjoy not spending money, but maybe getting their free daily keys and putting bonus experience into a skill they hate or whatever. So with the removal of Treasure Hunter, they are going to allow a capped amount of bonus experience to be able to be bought with real money. And I think that kind of appeases anyone who still wants that leg up in terms of gaining XP. And whenever a new skill and stuff comes out, they have like an amnesty period of like 6 months or something where you can't buy any, things to boost the new skill. So
Mhm.
for a competitive standpoint, it doesn't really change anything. And the biggest thing with like Treasure Hunter itself that a lot of people really disliked was the predatory nature of it, because it's a loot box system. So then just being able to potentially just buy bonus XP outright is a lot better than gambling for, big ticket XP and stuff, and also items that skip the skill entirely. Bonus experience, you still have to do the skill. You just gain twice as much experience with this bonus experience being used.
Exactly. And
And
I
obviously,
Oh no, I'm
Yeah,
sorry. No. Please finish your sentence.
I was just going to say that Iron Men are also locked out of all of that anyway. So a lot of people play Iron Men where none of this affects them really.
Right. No, for sure. And I agree with what you're saying. I just want to be clear there. But before I even chip in with my own perspective there, what do you think about like so the RuneScape 3 community, right? It is what it is. It hasn't necessarily grown in a while. It hasn't super shrunk either. It just kind of has remained. But I also understand that in I think it was 2023, they had some big drama happen with something called the Hero Pass, and if I recall correctly, that's one of the reasons why you kind of called it quits on the game for a little bit. Can you just walk me through that process before we double back down to the MTX poll and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, the hero pass thing was like the straw that broke the camel's back for me to move over to old school and give old school a proper try. Because I'm one of the players that like I'm 200 mil all skills. I race new skills when they come out. I got ranked 4 for archaeology when it was released. Necromancy, I'm like ranked 20th. Because I personally just didn't really enjoy the skill and it was completely imbalanced. It was really poorly made, very rushed, and well, like rank 1 slept 3 hours in like 5 days and it was over. It was 200 mil in 5 days.
That's
One,
crazy.
I like my sleep, so obviously I didn't do that. I was sleeping a little bit more than that. But in general, for a new skill to be able to be completed in 5 days to 200 million experience is absolutely absurd. And I was already feeling like demotivated with how poor the skill was, especially on release, and just a lot of the content leading up to it was very lackluster because they were putting all their time and effort into the new skills. So I was like, okay, if the new skill's good, I don't mind the previous updates for the last year being subpar. But then the skill was subpar, and then straight after they were like, it's okay, we've got a game changing update. It's going to be a massive update and you're all going to love it. And we were like, okay, maybe there'll be something cool coming out, maybe another big boss or, something cool expanding the skill or whatever. And it turned out it was a battle pass system that was like really outrageous. And if you wanted to complete absolutely everything in the system, it was like 1,200 hours to be able to unlock absolutely everything in like a 7 week period or something.
Yeah, that's crazy.
It was like pretty much impossible. So yeah, it was absolutely nuts, and they were just completely off the mark by saying it was like a game changing update and all of that. So everything coupled together, poor updates, bad new skill, and then finally just call in like a game changing update, just some MTX paid to win stuff. I was like, nah, I want to play old school and give it a try. And obviously now I play both games and I'm very like hopeful with the new direction that RS3 is going with the stuff like the removal of the treasure hunter, and they have a new CEO, and he seems to be really really hopeful for the future of RuneScape 3, and he wants to do everything he can by the sounds of things to uh, improve on previous uh, downfalls, I guess. Like make all of those shortcomings get removed and be improved, and just make the game last more than the next few years, right?
For sure. And yeah, that's a good summary of the events there and your feelings that eventually led you to exploring like an alternative option for RuneScape, I guess you could say. And I don't want to like shift the topic too much, but just to tie that into what we were talking about before with the MTX stuff, like my perception on it, or at least my understanding and my general feelings, is that the poll itself, right? Obviously, people say it's not a poll, right? It's more like a survey. And that's true, but very similar to old school RuneScapes thing. That's obviously what it's supposed to call back to. And to me, A, obviously it's good marketing, but B, it's all about other players or other people. I think that's something that maybe a lot of people didn't immediately tap into or connect with, because the immediate kind of perspective is, oh, it's a RuneScape 3 poll for RuneScape 3 and for RuneScape 3 players. But it's actually kind of, in my opinion, the complete opposite. This poll is like for everyone but, because the entire the entire issue with RuneScape 3 right now is that it's not growing, and the current trajectory it's on is not sustainable in the long term, right? That's why, the CEO, Mod North, right, he came out and he was like, this is not sustainable. We got to change something. And now we're going to make some brave choices to do so. And as a result, their focus right now is not just to retain their existing player base, which is already okay with the MTX stuff. It's to hopefully bring back and bring in new and returning players. Like, those are the people you need to appeal to. Those are the people you need to market to. That's the only way the game improves. So the poll on one hand is the RS3 players making their choice, and that's why the MTX experiments feedback was interesting. But on the other hand, it's also a little bit irrelevant because they're really aiming to another market right now as well, or just a much more broad market as well. But on top of that, like alongside this information, I think we both generally agree on is, what does the game look like still? And this is my main concern with like the trajectory, the poll, the return there, the kind of half measure solution with the buyable XP. Does the game suddenly look more appealing to people who left because of the MTX? And that's where I'm a little bit concerned, because I want RuneScape 3 to, be successful and to continue growing and find a new demographic of players that don't just want to, spin or accept that as the standard of play. But I'm nervous because an old school RuneScape player is never going to accept buyable XP. That's why would they, right? That they're going to feel super bad about that. And I want to hear your perspective on, like, do you think that this will positively impact the image? It will impact the image and it will be positive, but is it positive enough to eventually foster growth in the game again?
I think so, because it's the whole year period they're adding afterwards as well. So you're completely right with the it's not really a poll. It's you just click vote yes. There's no vote no option. It was like when it was like bring back old school, like you were saying, it needed 100k votes. It got like 120 odd k, and old school was brought back. There was no vote no on that either. It was just a vote yes. So what they're doing here is definitely a PR stunt for more eyes on it and more publicity and coverage, etc. But then that can start fostering people's knowledge of it. And then if they've read a little bit about it, there's going to be a year-long period post removal of the treasure hunter where they're going to be updating a lot of things. And it's not just updating MTX. It's also going to be addressing core issues like user interface, which is a huge thing. Visual cohesion, which is again is a bit of a mess in RS3 at times. Auras, dailyscape, stuff like that. Dailyscape is like the worst thing in my opinion in everything with RS3. There's just way too much dailyscape, and it's the easiest way to have a player burn out, with them logging on, feeling like they're doing chores for an hour or two before they can even, play the game. So if they're going to be removing Treasure Hunter, that then paints it in a better picture. And there's no predatory MTX. There's a little tiny bit of MTX in the game, but nothing major. And also, like, old school has bonds, but it's still looked at as a fine thing to have in the game, even though someone can just buy best in slot gear and have a leg up over someone else. Who really cares if credit card Timmy is just going to come along and have full Torva but can't even do a boss, right? So one of those things is like with the bonus experience, I think it's a lot different to something like Treasure Hunter, because Treasure Hunter would give you a bunch of items like proteans and skilling dummies that literally give you XP for AFKing for 5 minutes. So you can get level 99 in, say, Hunter by just AFKing a dummy or AFKing traps that just automatically get placed for you, and you just click once every 15 minutes. That is not playing the game, right? It's not doing anything for the economy. It's not doing anything for the game. You're not really doing a gameplay loop. And what they want to entice now is for everyone to play that gameplay loop and also improve that gameplay loop. So instead of you completely skipping skills, you're going to be interacting with the economy again. There's no XP for doing nothing. So it makes drops from bosses more valuable again. It makes the economy a bit more thriving. And if these things can be improved on, that then makes it way more appealing for someone to potentially come back to the game or give the game a second chance, or even just play a seasonal game mode when it comes along. Another thing that is aimed at enticing more people back to the game, right? There's plenty of people that play old school RuneScape just for Leagues or Gridmaster that's currently going on or whatever.
Yeah.
They don't play the game. They only play the seasonal game modes. So if RS3 gets like that as well, I don't think that's a bad thing. And it's also enticing more players to play the game, even if they're only playing the game for a few months a year.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I agree also when I was watching the video where they were announcing everything, that the most exciting announcement wasn't the removal of Treasure Hunter, which everybody kind of knew that's what they were building up to. It was the year after, right? When they're going to start addressing the stuff, because I'm not sure, obviously you are aware that I played Leagues. I'm not sure if you're aware how much I played or like regarding the video I created about it, but I noted a lot of the things that you were just mentioning in my time with Leagues. So I was kind of extrapolating that and being like, okay, so if it's the bad in Leagues where everything is like 16 times faster, I can't even imagine what's going on in the main game, right? And that was a really interesting thought process for me, and something that I was very eager to see how they would address. I talked with a couple of the developers in private about it, and I'm happy that there's more groundwork being done there. Something that I noticed, and I'm not sure if you noticed this too, returning back to RS3 after a while on a newer account, right, for Leagues and stuff. But I know you took a very specific path because you were racing, was just how many outdated methods there are in RuneScape 3 for training, to the point where, you know, old school is called old school RuneScape, but in many ways it feels more modern and like filled with quality of life and just general like smoothness of progression. There is no like skip a bridge in Mauritania for 22 agility levels. Like it's just like there's actual consideration put into the early and mid game, and something that hopefully will be addressed by the removal of this entire branch of monetization that allows people to skip skills without training them, is that they get a lot more feedback and gain incentives to actually revitalize the early and mid game, right? Because for as good as a lot of the end game in RS3 is, and I mentioned this in the video, how much I loved the PVM when I started kind of really understanding how it works, that takes a long time to see in RuneScape 3, especially in RuneScape 3, where most of the updates are end game stuff, you know? There aren't any like scurrious bosses in RuneScape 3. There's no scurrious or the Royal Titan bosses from old school. There's no like fun early to mid game stuff. It's only like the end game that really gets really crazy. While in old school, they really put a ton of effort into making the early and mid game function. And we see the results, right? How popular has old school RuneScape become just in this past year, where they had all the Volamore updates that were like 80% early to mid game content, you know? Look how fruitful that ended up being. So I agree with you, right? And I really hope that their upcoming continent, because I don't know if anyone knows, I think some people do, they're creating a whole new continent for RuneScape 3. I'm hoping that continent addresses some of these pitfalls of the early and mid game. What do you think about that?
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of skills that don't feel too great. And for the most part, as a main, the reason why they don't feel too great is because they're overshadowed by those like MTX alternatives and stuff. But there was a lot of issues that were arisen from Group Iron Man that came out on RS3 the earlier stages of this year. And it really shone a light on some of the skills early game that are pretty garbage. And I hope that they are looking into that, because they said that they're taking feedback on all of these things. And I think part of it is like this whole year, they've been trying to analyze the pain points for a lot of players. And they've asked for feedback on Twitter and on Reddit and all of this. And I think they've been gathering as much data as they can to then use in this next year of improvements to the game and the health of the game. Because just something as simple as there's this thing in RuneScape 3 where they removed all of the herbs as drops from bosses, and they replaced them only with seeds. So you only get seeds from bosses, and then you grow your own herbs, which is fine because you can plant up to 10 seeds at once in RuneScape 3 with this ability that you unlock. So that makes it okay that you're only getting seeds because you're getting a lot of herbs from growing them. But some seeds are just really impossible to get, especially at that early and like mid game. So like that early part of Herblore, you kind of just have to do quests and put all your quest XP into it, which I guess you kind of do in old school anyway, but it really takes away from the skill. And stuff like that have been given to the devs time and time again with Group Iron Man, with Leagues, with all of this stuff. And I think, I'm hopeful that they're taking all of this information on board and it's going to be part of that year-long process to help the mid and earlier game, because there was like an update, I don't know how long ago now, maybe 6 years ago, that was like completely mid-game content in Menaphos. It was like a whole city release, and the whole city of Menaphos is like mid-game content. And I think it was pretty well received by a lot of people. And if they can maybe make Haven Hive, the other new content they're working on that you were talking about, similar to Menaphos in that regards, it definitely could hit some of those pain points. And I'm hoping that they do hit some of those pain points with it, because Menaphos really, really helped with a lot of like woodcutting struggles. There's like end game woodcutting as well with those trees. Then there was fishing and a bunch of like decent food for the mid levels as well from those fish. And they released mining method. The mining's not good anymore, sadly, with the mining and smithing rework, but mining and smithing rework's good in my opinion anyway, so it doesn't really matter. But they released all of these things that really tied into those pain points. So yeah, if they could maybe look into maybe some more NPCs to pickpocket for some of those pain point herbs or something like that, and then also a bunch of other activities for some of the skills that people don't really enjoy leveling at their current states. Maybe something like Hunter. A lot of people have issues with Hunter and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. No, I definitely agree with you. I think that there is so the way I view RuneScape 3 after 350 odd hours of Leagues is there's something really great in there, but it's kind of just covered in shit right now. And I say it's bloat. There's so much bloat in the game. There's so much content that is totally like not done or useful or serves a purpose or shouldn't. And something I would, and maybe feel free to disagree with me here, by the way, I have no issue with that. Rather than, because the immediate response to like, oh, this thing is useless, is to just, okay, well, we'll put in effort, we'll put in development time, and we'll fix it. And that is healthy, but also not tenable with releasing new content and having their dev team spread really thin. Honestly, I think that RuneScape 3 is in a position right now where they can start kind of taking a buzzsaw to a lot of this content that is just not done anymore, or just serves no purpose other than just like facilitating daily scape, as you mentioned, which is horrific. I hate that stuff, especially in a sandbox MMO like RuneScape. And like, for example, I can bring up some specific examples and you can tell me, dude, you're crazy, or yes, do this, right? Things like sandstone, like the flecked sandstone for the two different kinds of flasks. There's the crystal flasks and the ogre flasks, or like the flasks you get from the ogre area. Two different dailies where you're just AFK mining for like 5 minutes in two different areas of the map. That's stupid. Honestly, like, they shouldn't be dailies. You should be able to just do it whenever you want. It's a fucking flask. Yeah.
Exactly.
The same applies to, like, for example, like the hourlies. Oh my God, don't even get me started. Like the caches for divination and stuff. In my opinion, there's two options for this stuff. You either just remove it from the game and buff divination experience rates and outputs by like 300%, or you make it a training method in the game, but it's no longer a daily. You just lower the experience rates a bit and you can just do whenever you want. And it just becomes another way of training in a bit more active a manner, right? Because you're just surging between the things and stuff. Could be kind of fun if they have a specific world for it or whatever. Like, this is the kind of solutions they need. You don't need to be like, oh man, no one's doing like a mini game we added in 2013. Time to rework the mini game and hopefully someone does it. Sometimes the best solution is just to cut your loss and really make the game feel a little bit less, stuffed with like fat and stuff. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like right now the game is just kind of, there's all this random stuff that you're seeing in the overworld, for example. You run through like Lumbridge and that Draenor area, and you see like 97 different portals to 97 different locations. And you're like, I don't care about this stuff. I don't know what it means. I'd rather just be in the world as it is, right? Or as it's supposed to be. So I wonder how do you feel about like potentially just them being like, hey, we have 30 mini games. No one really does most of them. We'll keep the ones that are like the classics, like Castle Wars, but there's so much stuff that no one does, and I feel like it's just kind of taking up a world right now where instead the world could just be a bit more, you know, lean, I guess you could say. How do you feel about that, or am I crazy for saying that?
I don't know about like completely removing it unless it's like a really bad detriment, then sure. But I think the best way they could do it is just don't try and improve that content, but make new content that shines on its own outright. They did it a lot with divination. Divination used to be a lot worse to like manually train, and they did like this whole like new way of training, and they released a couple of items and stuff that helped it as well. And then there was like thieving was like the worst skill in the game, but then they released something called safe cracking. I don't know whether you did it.
Yeah, I did do a bit of it.
Yeah, and then safe cracking was like the best way to train the skill. So instead of reworking all of the old things to pickpocket, they kind of just left them, and you can pickpocket them if you want. And then they also added a bunch of new content that was better, I guess. And then they also then gave different options for safe cracking. You can actively do it, you can AFK it. Then they added a couple of other monsters later on that now can be like the high end active methods from pickpocketing. So you have choices again. So I think best way to do these things is not necessarily spend a ton of time reworking them or just completely removing them. I think it's okay that they exist in a game because the game's been going for, you know, nearly 30 years or like 26, 27 years or whatever it is. Like, I think it's okay for the game to have some content that just is never played, but have it remain for that maybe nostalgic purpose if you ever want to go visit it or something.
The Calphite Queen of RuneScape 3 is what you're saying, kind of like an old school RuneScape. The Calphite Queen is a boss that might never get reworked, even though like no one likes or does it, you know?
Yeah. It's like, it's a shit piece of content, but it's like, it is old school. Like, you can't remove that because it has to exist, you know? But they can release better bosses and better ways to obtain things. So, like with the Calphite Queen, the only thing that is unique to it now is the head, right? But you can get the other stuff from other places much better and easier. So it's like you don't necessarily have to rework that content. You can give like new content existing rewards and structures, right?
I definitely see where you're coming from. I guess my main concern with that path would be that what ends up, or the risk of that would be that new players who are joining the game might, well, first of all, they might feel overwhelmed, but that can be solved. It's mainly the fact that like by keeping a lot of like, you know, irrelevant or not done content in the game while simultaneously populating the game with stuff that is really, really good, is that you're creating an environment where for new players, you're either going to the wiki or you are just accidentally doing the wrong thing and then being confused because you're like, no one's doing this stuff. I guess I have to go somewhere else. And it just creates a lot of like stop gaps, like a lot of points where you're just running into a brick wall and going, oh, that's not the correct path, rather than just having a lot of different paths that all lead you somewhere in the direction where you want to be. And I guess that's my main concern, but I still obviously understand the value of retaining some things that are really nostalgic, like Castle Wars, right? I've just started playing RuneScape essentially, but I still don't want Castle Wars to ever be removed, even if a lot of people don't do it, because it is such a foundationally important like pillar of like what the game was. You want that building to be there regardless. But I'm kind of, I looked this up just now. I'm kind of referring to like the big cabbage bonanza minigame. Like, do you know what that is from RuneScape 3?
The Cabbage Face Punch?
Yes. I was confusing it with the big top with Beauregard's big top circus weekly.
The circus weekly.
So from so I guess for me it's like that mini game, right? Where I feel like I don't know if would anyone be upset if that wasn't in the game tomorrow? I'm not sure.
I mean, it's actually not a bad mini game. It gives the farming outfit.
Okay.
It gives patch bombs, and it can give a bunch of bonus experience in farming and mining as like a reward for doing it. And it also gives Slayer VIP tickets, which allow you to pick 2 different tasks. You consume the ticket if you pick the second task.
Oh, okay. So if I'm understanding correctly, then like your perspective is more so, apart from what you mentioned before, is kind of like a lot of these integrity changes when it comes to like alleviating some of the issues with the game right now is, and by the way, I totally agree with this if this is the case, focus on like content that feels mandatory, like the endless glut of hourlies and dailies in the game, like that too. And that's something I also noticed, like exploring the game for the first time in leagues and all this kind of stuff. The amount of dailies is ridiculous, right? It's insane. And a lot of them can just be made into regular content that isn't daily content. And some of them can probably be removed too, in my opinion. But like
those can be removed 100%. Yeah.
What do you think of wilderness events?
Yeah. So like stuff like that are crazy because competitive group Ironmen, they just disabled wilderness events because they knew they were super strong. So it's like, if you already know that piece of content is overpowered, but you just disable it instead of like fixing it, you're just adding a band-aid to the problem, I guess. It's they're like the worst part of the content in RuneScape 3, in my opinion. Like when I was talking about not removing pieces of content, I didn't mean not removing like dailies and stuff like that. I meant like existing methods that might not be as good, because old school has plenty of those, right? There's plenty of ways that you might train. Like you can power mine iron on old school if you really want to.
Yeah.
Would I advise power mining iron over just going to somewhere like, the mining guilds and
Motherlode Mine?
Motherlode Mine, that's it. I was thinking Lava Flow Mine, which is a RuneScape 3 thing. Motherlode Mine, or then like if you want to go tick manip, you just do like gem rocks or something, right?
Yeah.
So there's always like different methods, or you could like do granite, or you could do sandstone as an Iron Man and get crafting XP. There's so many different routes that you can take, but there's still routes that are technically wrong, because the worst out of all of that, because it only gives you a bit of XP, is the power mining iron, right? So someone still might want to do that, and that's completely fine. They're just not really going to be as efficient. The same applies in RuneScape 3. There's like a bunch of skilling methods that are nowhere near as efficient, but if someone wants to do it, they can. And I don't think it's an issue to have it remain in the game. The things that are an issue to remain in the game the way they are the stuff like the dailies and the hourlies and stuff like that. So the wilderness flash events, for anyone who doesn't know what they are, you have to go on the hour every hour, and there'll be an event. It's a different event every hour, and then it rotates on like a 12-hour basis or whatever, because there's like 12 different events. And then 4 of those events are like big boy events that give you an even bigger, XP drop and a bigger loot sack that gives you more rewards. And it skips a lot of content in that way. Like, for example, on Leagues, I didn't even train range once, and I got 50 million experience for a task by just doing wilderness flash events and putting the XP lamp into range. Like, I didn't even touch the skill. And that's part of the problem, because I would have much rather it where I actually had to engage in that, and I couldn't just skip it entirely. So I think part of the problem is that they want to make these things rewarding to the players, but if they make them too rewarding, they can't make them repeatable. So they make them limited to daily or weekly or monthly or, hourly. And then that causes the issue of, what the heck do I do this hour? Do I go do a cache? Do I go do a wilderness flash event? Do I go do this other thing that's like every 2 hours, like, whatever. So it's like they're juggling all of these crazy things, and you have to like prioritize which one you're doing. And then that alone just makes you not want to play the game, because you feel like you're just continuously bouncing around. It's like the reason why they added stackable clues in old school. People didn't want to just up and leave their Slayer task halfway through because they got a clue scroll. They wanted to have, 2 or 3, so then they could complete their whole task, then go do all 3 clue scrolls. And that's
Exactly.
like part of the issue on RS3. Like, you have to up and leave the middle of your task to go do this Wilderness Flash event or go do this Gathixian cache because you feel forced into doing it because the reward is so great.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm the premier clue scroll hater, okay? I absolutely hate clue scrolls. I'm currently on my Iron Man trying to get Ranger boots, and it is miserable. I absolutely hate this content. I hate the fact that there's best in slot boots behind it. It's insane to me that I have to do medium clue scrolls for best in slot boots. But regardless, it's okay. That's a whole different topic. I hate clue scrolls.
Yeah.
In that they give the like random best stuff. I like them as like a concept. I like the fact that there's like early game like rewards, like, oh, you can get your Black D'hide or your Blessed God D'hide. That's all great. Best in slot content from medium clues is crazy. But outside of that, I definitely agree, and I'm in heavy support of like stackable clues as they added them to old school. And I know RuneScape 3 has had them because I hated that pressure of, oh, well, it's a clue scroll and it's one of the good ones. I have to drop everything I'm doing to go do it right now, or I have to do the juggling method to sustain like my enjoyment of this or this flow state of this Slayer task or whatever. Hated that. So I'm very much, dropped something. So I'm very much in support of them adding stackable ones. And to translate that to RuneScape 3, I am way less experienced in the game than you are and a lot of people that are playing leagues. But even then, I got into this rhythm where I had this like constant, pressure in my chest because I was looking at my clock, waiting for the turn of the hour, had to keep my wilderness events on one monitor to see what's coming up next, had to make sure I had my caches done to keep my divination, get it to 95 so I can farm the best stuff. And it's like you're playing the game, you're not in a flow state, you're like waiting every hour for something to happen. And it got to a point where I felt bad about doing PVM, the stuff that I really loved, for more than an hour. Like, it makes sense that auras only last for an hour because they're out. You gotta go do your new wilderness event, And my God, I hated
auras
all of that stuff.
Issue.
Yeah. And I'm sure we'll touch on that. But like, I really hated this like lack of flow state because when I was grinding the boss, I was loving it. When I was perfecting my rotation, I was loving it. When I was getting the upgrades, it felt awesome. But like, when I had to remind myself, but this thing that gives 10, 30 times more experience in 5 minutes than you can get in an hour is just insane. So yeah, I think they need to either fully rework the way they operate, like maybe do a thing where they're always up, they give less experience, but but every reward, like you could earn a currency there that you could buy something cool, wilderness related with, to make people incentivized to kind of grind them out. Maybe there's like 3 up at a single time and they change locations. I don't know. Whatever they do with it, it can't be an hourly. Hourlies are just the worst thing ever.
Look at Shooting Stars, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, they're technically hourly spawns, but they're always up. So you just hop to the world with one and go mine it, right?
Exactly.
You need something like that.
100%. That's exactly kind of the vision I had for it, where like you had multiple wilderness events up at once. Obviously, they don't give the amount of experience they do now or the kinds of rewards they do now, but like the wilderness sacks you could grind and they're stackable and you could grind them out for like a couple hours. They might give you either a small chance of something good or a currency that you could spend at a special wilderness vendor to give you, I don't know, maybe some wilderness specific weapons like an old school RuneScape. It could be kind of fun stuff like that. That's very flavorful, that makes Wilderness Slayer a better thing.
They used to give weapons that were only obtainable in the wilderness, but they removed it from it because it was too overpowered.
Even more crazy,
Yeah, you have to get the tier 87 wilderness weapons from doing Wilderness Slayer.
Yeah.
They're so rare that it's like not worth doing, which is a shame.
Yeah, exactly. I'm curious now, like, obviously for people that aren't aware, I keep saying obviously, but maybe people aren't, it's not obvious for some people. So Wilderness was reworked in RuneScape 3. It no longer is a PvP area unless you toggle PvP on. They also visually reworked it. They kind of changed the function of the wilderness a little bit. And on one hand, I don't mind because I am not a huge fan of having a lot of PvE content in the wilderness. Personally, I don't like, for example, the Void Waker. I like the fact that the wilderness bosses exist in Old School RuneScape. I just want to clarify. I like the fact that you can get some insane early and mid game like resources for prayer, herb lore from risking your account there, or not account, but your loot there or whatever. That's all great. I just don't like that there's like a best in slot spec weapon behind all that stuff. But beside the point, they changed that in RS3. RS3 now it's mainly a PvE area, and on one hand I'm like I understand why. On the other hand, there is something sad about going into the wilderness and not really feeling like it's any different than any other area. So I kind of wish, and I don't know how you feel about this, but I kind of wish they would find a way to make it a little bit more dangerous in the wilderness. My immediate kind of idea was to make it like a group zone where every enemy in the wilderness drops better stuff, but is like way harder, like an elite dungeon kind of vibe, but the entire wilderness where to go in the wilderness and successfully do Slayer with you have to bring people with you, like a 3-man Slayer task or something. Could be kind of fun. I don't know. What are your thoughts on the wilderness in RuneScape 3?
I think it's still pretty dangerous in terms of like easy to die in. If you're not an end game player with like good gear, you will die in the wilderness very easily. Everything's aggressive to you, and they're always like big amounts of the mobs with high tier Slayer mobs and stuff. And if a Ripper Demon gets on you and you're
I did die to those,
you're just instantly falling over.
Yeah, I did die to those.
And then the same applies with like the Wyverns and the Gemstone Dragons, stuff like that. There's quite a lot of scary monsters in the wilderness. I think it still has a bit of a fear factor to it. And if you don't have best in slot gear, there's a lot of places in the wilderness that you can't farm the mobs at because there's like too many of them and you'll die or whatever. So you kind of have to go to the main island, like Gillinor part, to farm them in an easier way. So I think they've done pretty well. And the thing is, like, to a lot of old school players, like not having PvP must sound crazy, but the RuneScape 3 PvP system was just garbage. It was so bad. All you needed to do was wait until you had like asphyxiate, which can stun multiple times, and then maybe another hard hitting weapon, and then something called reprisal, which deflects damage you take back at someone. And then all that would happen in a fight in PvP is you would wait until they hit you big with your reprisal on, kind of like how you would with Venge. But then you stun lock them and then hit them big back, and then they can't even eat or anything, and they'll just die. So what happened was everyone just started using tank armor, and no one could kill each other because everyone was so tanky, and everyone was trying to stun lock each other and kill each other. But you would just fight forever, take a pack yak, eat through your whole inventory, eat through your whole pack yak, and then run away. Like that was literally PvP, and it was terrible. It just was not a good experience. So I think personally, removing it just made sense with how the combat system is. It's just not built for PvP. And I still think the wilderness is dangerous enough with all of the monsters. And I think they've done a pretty good job to rework the wilderness. It's like best in slot Slayer for a bunch of different tasks, which is cool. And you can do the tasks that are given to you outside of the wilderness in the wilderness still. You just can't do the ones you get from the wilderness outside of the wilderness, if that makes sense. So sometimes you opt to go into the wilderness to do a Slayer task that you've got from like the level 90 Slayer Master in the overworld. So I think it's pretty cool. I think it's fine. The biggest issue with the wilderness for me is the wilderness flash events and the like hourly scape of that. But then that's obviously the hourly scape issue, not the wilderness issue.
Yeah, I really hope I want what I want to see from Jagex is from the RuneScape 3 team specifically is like a big blog post addressing the dailies in the game. Something that's probably, we talk about caches and the wilderness flash events, some of the more egregious examples, but to me, the most egregious example, and I did not experience this in Leagues because of a League specific change. I don't know if you can already guess what I'm going to bring up here, but it's not having infinite shop stock for stuff like runes is insane to me. Like I don't even understand how people play, like do magic in that game, because the rune crafting in RuneScape 3 is very similar in like the early and mid game. And unless you have that specific rune crafting item from the second skilling boss, the Gate of Elidinus, it's kind of very similar to just doing Abyss rune crafting, from what I could tell. So you're just so low constantly, I feel, on a lot of like just standard elemental runes, unless you're logging in daily as an Iron Man and just buying like stacks of like 500 from like 10 different shops. That to me is nutty. That's just crazy to me. Do you feel like that's warranted, or would you rather just see the old school pack system?
Yeah, just sell packs, sell it infinitely. Just it will be, if they sell it higher than what it sold on the GE, then it doesn't affect the main economy, and like no one's going to buy them to resell them because there's nothing to benefit from that. And then all they need to do is just sell infinite packs, or if they don't want to sell infinite packs, at least make the stock like world specific, like old school, and include packs. Because it got to a point on my hardcore Iron Man where I wanted to do a skilling method called crystallize, which is where you use it on a spot. It gives no resources but gives more XP.
Mhm.
And it costs a lot of soul runes to do that, and you have to cast it every minute. So you could buy 200 soul runes a day, and that was it. With every shop unlocked, everything, you could just buy 200. So you could cast that spell 100 times a day, which is 100 minutes. And then I had to then go do shop runs for like 5 days just to be able to go and do a day worth of like the skilling method that I wanted to do. And crafting soul runes in RS3 is also very slow, because they're used for like empowering the rift and giving you a bunch of XP, but you don't get many actual soul runes from it. So that makes it even more annoying, because I couldn't even craft my own soul runes if I wanted to do it either, because you're crafting like 200 an hour or something. So it was just terrible. It was like my least favorite part of the whole entire game. And it's what burnt me out of playing my Iron Man. And I went back to my main eventually. Obviously before moving to old school and everything. But like there's a lot of things, especially for Iron Men, with those dailies, those hourlies, those shop issues, that just make the game unfun. Like you want to play the game, you want to do these cool things and do these fun methods, but you're just locked out of them. And that should never be the case. You should never be locked out of something that you want to do.
Yeah, I agree. I think that and this kind of stems from a level of upkeep. And another issue I noticed in leagues is there's a lot of upkeep in the game, even in leagues where you're getting a lot of expedited stuff, or like just increased amounts of stuff. Like, man, I was cracking up with my friend the other day, or a couple weeks ago, I guess, when I was playing leagues. I was showing him, because he only plays old school, how to make an Elder Overload potion. And it was like a 15-minute process. I swear, like a 15-minute process to make one. It was just so ridiculous. And because for people that aren't aware, it takes like 20 different secondaries, 20 different potions that you have to combine all together to make a single potion. It is craziness. And stuff like that, I think, can really, I think there's a method that you can just pull back from that level of like intersectional like usage of different secondaries. And because I get why they did that, right? To keep the original overload still relevant, you create the super overload or whatever it's called, and then you create the elder one out of that one, and then you combine the elder one with different potions and create the elder overload salve and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. It's kind of it's a lot, and it kind of, you bring this up where it's this knowledge that you have to do all of this stuff just to get a single potion that you can use for the thing you actually wanted to do. It's a bit too much friction for me. The same actually applies. And I'm not as passionate about RuneLite and plugins as other people are, but it kind of reminds or applies to questing in some ways, where I like questing in RuneScape, I do, but thinking about having to do 200 of them that I've already done in old school, again, just for RuneScape 3, that's a little bit like, that's a lot for me. I'm like, am I super excited to do that? Not really. And with old school RuneScape, I don't care, because then I could just use the quest helper and make every hour-long quest take 5 minutes instead. But for RuneScape 3, there's no option in that regard. There's Alt 1 or whatever, but that's not quest helper.
That's just the wiki quick.
Yeah, exactly. So stuff like that, I wonder how they could implement that. It's a very long and difficult project, but are you generally in support of something like add-ons, or add-ons, I'm sorry, that's the World of Warcraft term, plugins for RuneScape? For RuneScape 3,
yeah, I think it'd be beneficial for sure. I think a lot of the quality of life of old school's plugins are already in RuneScape 3 for some things, but there's many things like Quest Helper, for example, and Entity Swapper would be amazing, right? Being able to swap my left click on a bunch of stuff would be a godsend. So just the simple stuff, I would love to be able to be, plugged, like get a plug-in for. Even tile markers, there's plenty of places that you got to stand in certain boss fights, and it can sometimes be a bit overwhelming to know where like one part starts and where something else cuts off. So if I could just mark a couple of tiles in a boss encounter like I do on old school, just to know, okay, I'll stand here on P1, I'll stand here on P2 or whatever. That alone is a huge quality of life improvement, in my opinion.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I'm curious. So, we're critical. We're being very critical of the game right now, which is reasonable, I think, for good reasons. But also, there are elements of RuneScape 3 that I think are really great. And that's something I also took note of in my longer video about it, where something that really spoke to me was just the PVM is really fun. I think that a lot of people coming from old school RuneScape have this understanding of the evolution of combat, have this understanding of action bar driven combat and how it worked maybe back in 2013 and 2014 and 2015. But as someone coming from World of Warcraft and so many other MMOs that I've played, there is something really unique about RuneScape 3's combat system. It's very different than World of Warcraft. I think people often compare the two because I guess they both have action bars, but it's very, very different. It feels different. It functions differently because in RuneScape 3 and in RuneScape in general, you're not bound by a class. So you have all the utility, you have all the tanking capabilities, you have all the DPS capabilities all in a single toolkit, which creates for really unique decision-making processes as you do your rotation. It's really satisfying. And I imagine you agree with me that like there's some really wonderful stuff in the PVM for RuneScape 3.
Yeah, but then also there's the issue of it takes you so long to get into PVM because there's no Moons of Peril and you know Scarius, etc. Like you were talking about. So the first bosses we get are like, I guess Gobble's Dungeon 1, but
those aren't even bosses.
Gobble's Dungeon 1, because then you go do like Gobble's Dungeon 2 with Vindicta and Hellweir and stuff, and those bosses very fun. Like I genuinely think Gobble's Dungeon 2 bosses are the best way to learn PVM in entry level in RS3, and they really teach you like the fundamental, just basic mechanics of like maybe one or two different things, maybe using devotion or using a shield swap and resonance in, so you heal. Like you can just add that one thing that you're learning each time, and it really, really helps. But I think there should be something before that because they require 80 attack and 80 magic and stuff to kill. And if you're not bossing until level 80, that can feel a bit bad. Whereas you can, boss way earlier in old school with like 60s and 70s stats.
Yeah, and those are just entry point stats, right? Like 70s in God Wars Dungeon 1, right? Most people don't go to God Wars Dungeon 1 in old school with 70s, like usually go in with much higher stats than that. So like in RuneScape 3, it's similar, right? Like, you can enter the Vindicta fight with, it was 80 attack, I think.
Yeah, 80 attack. Yeah.
And, but you're generally not going to go there with just 80 attack. You're going to try buff yourself up a little bit more than that. But I do agree, and I'll let you finish there, but I do totally agree with you that I would say the first proper PVM stuff in RuneScape 3 that I've experienced was God Wars Dungeon 2. Like I did other stuff before that, but it's all not good. But the real stuff that teaches you the mechanics of the game is God Wars Dungeon 2. So I hope to see stuff like that, but like way earlier. We're talking like 50s, because PVM in RuneScape 3, and tell me I'm wrong here, is it feels much more a core appeal, right? In old school RuneScape, there's so many other core appeals of the game. That there's people that can just never do it ever, and it's whatever. But in RuneScape 3, it feels like the PVM is such a foundational element. The combat is such a focal point of the game in some ways. It's something that people always talk about, and it clearly is something they put so much effort into. I feel like it would be sad to not see new players able to experience that until 80s and 90s in their combat stats.
I agree. Yeah, that's why I really, really enjoyed making like a new main, because I just had fun with stuff like Moons of Peril early on and stuff. Like being able to experience that from a lower level standard was really fun. And it definitely means that you wouldn't get some like end game content for a little bit if they were focusing a bit more on mid game and stuff. But in terms of the enjoyment for the game, I think it would be insane. Like we know how good it was for old school and how much it increased people's enjoyment. And just seeing like the WoW players play old school and have a goal of like, I want to go kill Scurious with my dragon scimitar with like, 60 attack. And that's cool because being able to go kill a boss that feels like a boss that teaches you some mechanics at such an early stage is a great feeling. And then that also motivates you to go do further bossing and level up further. Whereas if there's nothing until late game, you'll easily burn out before you even get to that point, for sure.
I mean, I'll echo that completely. As someone who came into RuneScape, I think it was a month, I think a month or like half a month after Scarius came out. That was my first goal for the game, because up until that point, the only experience you have with combat is like borderline AFK or like flinching, I guess you could say, flinching the Black Knight Titan in that one quest, or Tanglefoot or whatever. It's all who cares really. It's not super engaging or fun. But then you have Scurious, and he kind of just like wallops you at first. For someone that's never played RuneScape, really, it's just like, holy shit. There's like, not only is there mechanics, but they're also just not like accidental mechanics where you're just breaking the pathing or something. It's like actual stuff you're doing. You feel like you're responding to attacks. And I think you kind of hit the nail on the head there when you said it just feels like a actual boss fight. It's a boss. And that's what I think Scurious, unironically, is like one of the best updates in old school RuneScape, because of how far it shifted down the barrier to entry for PVM, and how well it teaches things like prayer flicking, like avoiding shit on the ground, like changing your target and killing some rats. And then it also integrated some really novel features that future bosses started using, like the off-tick weapons that you get, the rat bone weapons that can be off-ticked on the ads or whatever. Now Doom does that same thing with the grubs, right? I don't know if you've done Doom yet, but he does that same thing. Really, really, really cool. So I love Scurious a ton, and I love Perilous Moons for similar reasons too. I really hope that the RuneScape 3 team kind of resonates with that and responds to that, even if it means having to create a mid-game boss that has like a hard mode option for the good players or whatever. But like, make something that mid-game players or early game players in their 60s and 70s in their combat stats with their fledgling Barrows gear or whatever can go and be super excited to do. That's for sure.
Yeah. I mean, even something like Bryophyta and Obor, those things don't exist in RS3 either. And beginner clues don't exist in RS3. There's a lot of like early content that old school have that are really, really nice and fun, and just something cool that you can even just randomly encounter. You might be killing hill giants for a Slayer task, and oh, what's this key? And then you explore, and then you go kill Obor for the first time. It feels cool, right? So it's like enabling fun dopamine hits at early game entices people to get to mid game, entices people to get to late game after getting those dopamine at mid game. So it's like they need to give those reward systems at every level. And old school does it perfectly with, beginner clues for like maybe a skiller can be a really fun thing where you're not even bossing, but you're also still getting some chances of big loot in mole slippers being over 1 million GP, right? Like, you can still get a big ticket item and get that dopamine rush, or even just a rare item, right? And then there's nothing for that in RS3 really. And I think that's like one of the big issues with the gameplay loop in general. They kind of made it so they tried to propel you as quickly as possible to the late game. which I guess is fine, but the journey is part of the enjoyment of the game. And if they're not giving you a fun journey to get to the end game, then a lot of people just won't even get to the end game. And I think that's a big thing with old school. No matter what level you are, there's plenty of fun things you can do. I know it's not the most fun for a lot of players, but something like Guardians of the Rift or something like Temporos, like learning to solo Temporos, I actually really enjoyed, and I think it's a cool boss. There's like no barrier to entry to that.
It's 35 fishing, right? You can get that in half a day.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so you just literally go do a little tiny bit of fishing or do one quest, Sea Slug, and you'll be pretty much there. So it's like one of those ones where they've released skilling bosses in RS3, but the issue that they keep doing is the newest skilling boss they released can't even be done by a skiller because it requires like 80 necromancy. So it's like the boss has no PVM, but they've locked it behind necromancy so that you need to do PVM to go do the skilling boss. Like, why? Just enable some early level skilling bosses that scale with levels so they're still good to do at endgame. They give some cool rewards, just like old school. And like, I'm just always, I don't know, taken back when RS3 released something really cool, because I think Gate of Olyndus is actually a pretty cool skilling boss.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people don't like it and they find it fairly boring, but that's because they're PVMers and they don't want to do a skilling boss, which is fine. But as a skilling boss, and as far as they go, I think it's great. It has some really fun mechanics. It has a really fun mechanic where you jump up pillars and you have to do it quickly, otherwise you lose out on damage, and then you smash the boss in the head. Like, it's just those type of things are what the early game needs that also scale towards the later games so you can come back to it at any time. And the issue that RS3 keeps doing is locking it behind high requirements, so it's locking out that early game way of training or some early game dopamine hits in loot,
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I think and I will echo that as well. I've done both the skilling bosses at this point in RS3, much more of the second one and much more of Gate than I did of Croesus. And I will say right now, Croesus, I know a lot of people hate Croesus. I think it is like so beyond other skilling bosses in regards to like mechanical depth. It's kind of insane how much different, in my opinion, Croesus is than the others in both games. Like every skilling boss, Wintertodd, you're clicking two things. Temporos is amazing. I love Temporos, but it's very simple, right? Guardians of the Rift is more like a mini game, which is great. I like Guardians of the Rift too. And obviously Gate of Olyndus it's engaging. I like Gate of Olyndus, but it's very easy. Croesus requires like actual coordination, especially just to learn with like a 4-man. It requires like an actual understanding of the rotation that each one of you is doing, and being responsive to that and how you're dealing with individual mechanics, and in some cases helping each other complete them. That skilling like kind of blew me away when I did it. I'm like, holy shit, like they were crazy cooking with this boss, like really crazy. If only the game had a grouping system. And that's a topic for a different time. This is a criticism I have of both old school RuneScape and RuneScape 3. The lack of spoilers on my next video, I guess. The lack of grouping system is damning for a game that constantly wants to release grouping content. And maybe we can touch on that in a moment. But I agree. I'm echoing everything you're saying in regard to the skilling bosses. I want more stuff like that in the early game, because another piece of content in RuneScape 3 that super resonated with me, but most people might not ever get to a point where they could do it as a skiller or as someone who does skilling, is Big Game Hunter, right?
Oh, it's the best skilling content in the whole entire game.
Yeah, like I would even go so far as to say it's some of the best skilling content in either game. Like I think Big Game Hunter is like awesome. It's so cool.
I agree, yeah.
To the point where I am like baffled when I was reading about it, where it's like it came out in like 2020 and or 2019 or something. And to me, it's like, okay, you guys kind of nailed it with this piece of content. Why not expand it? Why not add encounters throughout the world that start at level like 20 or 30 or something, and then like you're building up to the dinosaurs at 76 and onward, right? Like, why? This is such a great opportunity to make the hunter skill actually fun to do, something that honestly both games kind of struggle with sometimes. So like, oh my God, like you have this method, you kind of did it. Now you can just adapt it with small mechanical changes you have the platform already done. And the fact that it's not been done tells me that they were really prioritizing making more AFK skilling methods. And that's the second thing I want to tell you. Yeah, tell me.
Sorry,
No.
I interrupted you.
All I was gonna say is like I feel like, and maybe this is what you're going into here, RuneScape 3 falls into the pitfall, and we will touch on this more later, of prioritizing really AFK content over engaging content that like you can actually pay attention to and play. I'm not sure if that's what you're going to mention, but I just want to bring that up with Big Game Hunter being engaging and awesome.
Kinda, but yeah. So the release of Big Game Hunter was the most awesome thing that they've done in a long time, because they released Big Game Hunter. Obviously, they did lock it behind 75 Hunter, which I think was a mistake. Although, like, 75 Hunter is only, a 12th of the way to 99, so it's not too terrible locking it behind 75. But regardless of that, they rebalanced the whole Hunter skill on the release of Big Game Hunter and crunched all of the XP rates of every other method so that Big Game Hunter was the best in slot XP when you're hunting the level 5 95 dinosaurs. And at the time, Hunter was completely out of hand, and Ornate Turtles on the Arc and Crystal Skill Chompers with a high agility level, they were pushing like 2 million experience an hour. And they were just like completely out of hand, and there was no way they were going to release a new method without, making it completely busted. So what they done is they crunched all the numbers down. Big Game Hunter, if you're very, very efficient and very good at the game, you can push a bit over 1 million experience an hour on the high tier ones, but then the low tier ones will be slower. So you average like 750k an hour or something, which was great because they crunched all of the others to be like 600k or so an hour, maybe 700k when you're really efficient. So Big Game Hunter became the best method and the most fun and engaging method. Then a few years later go by, they turn the nozzle on the treasure hunter. They release protein traps, which are AFK. You right click them, you do lay trap, and you just continuously lay traps and take the thing that you trapped out of the trap and lay a new one without even engaging. Like, it was literally you AFK, and it just continuously auto lays all of your traps for you. And that was like 1.2 million experience an hour, and it was only obtainable from the treasure hunter. So like that then killed Big Game Hunter for any main account, because then they all just started using protein traps on double XP weekends and getting like 2.5 million experience an hour and skipping the skill. And then fast forward another year, they then decide to release Croesus, which is fine because Croesus should be decent XP, and it was a little bit slower XP than Big Game Hunter in the actual boss fight. So yeah, cool. Very, very close. But then they changed the Hunter cape so that it has a way to 2-tick Hunter by literally just putting your cape on your action bar and interacting with the cape every time you get an XP drop, so that you could just click it every 2 ticks, which sped up just Croesus. But it also sped up the little stuff outside of Croesus, like the skilling nodes outside that give resources. And it made that method, when 2-ticking it, 1.4 million experience an hour, because it was 700k base and it was twice as fast. So once you hit 99 Hunter, if you were going to go for 120, you just then felt like you shouldn't do Big Game Hunter, even though it's like way more enjoyable than clicking your cape every single 2 ticks and nothing else, right? But like, why would I do Big Game Hunter for half the experience rate than literally just pressing my like 1 key every 2 ticks to get double that? Like, it was such a stupid decision on their behalf that they done that, because they took so much time for the integrity of the Hunter skill and they balanced it so well. And then the next Hunter thing they release literally doubles the XP rates of the next things and just trashes it. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
they then just re-killed the skill with MTX and a stupid method. So it's like, Big Game Hunter is still my favorite piece of content in the game, but they did it dirty, and they've done that on so many different skills. At least the MTX side of it being removed means that it's still going to now be 75 to 99 best in slot, no questions asked type deal, which is great. It's going to be great again, but like, they're still just doing so many stupid things, and it just makes me sad because they have this whole philosophy of if it's good money and gives loot, it can't be good XP, which is just a dumb take in my opinion. It should be good in both because you're putting so much effort into it.
Yeah.
So then releasing something and being like, oh, it doesn't give any loot, so it has to give more XP than this thing. And they've done it on so many different things. Like Crosus doesn't give that much like woodcutting XP, that much fishing XP and stuff. And you're better just AFK fishing for more XP, which shouldn't be the case. You should get more XP from the skilling boss. And they, have the whole philosophy of it's giving you GP, so it can't be best in slot XP. But then you look at old school with like Winter Todd, that gives you like so many good resources early game and is way better XP than anything else. And that makes it good content, in my opinion.
Yeah, I do agree. I do agree with what you're saying here. Like, obviously we're speaking generally. I'm sure there's, the Inferno shouldn't be the best in slot combat XP maybe, but I do generally agree with what you're saying here because I've also said similar stuff, and I've actually aimed that criticism more so at old school RuneScape just because I'm less familiar with a lot of RS3 stuff. Like something I always bring up is Hollowed Sepulchre, which is the hardest skilling content in old school RuneScape by a country mile. It's super well designed. It's the one kind of way to do agility that's not like the most brain dead, like, God, I hate the way regular agility works on like every conceivable level. It actually takes skill. It has skill expression involved. But you need to be tick perfect and not loot to get really good XP rates. Like, especially after the agility changes they did to the rooftop courses, it's like 20k above the RD course if you're doing it really well and if you're not looting. So it's like you're putting in maybe 10, 20, 30 times more effort into something and you're getting like 20% more experience. And it's something that I'm always very critical of in that, like, the amount of effort the output should reflect the amount of effort you put in. It should not be small, just be to like, make people that don't have that skill level, quite frankly, feel better about the choices they make. No, it should motivate people to become better at something. That's why they release best in slot armor in PVM, right? Like, no one would do the new boss, even if it's really fun. If it's drops or dog shit. I mean, look at Fasani's Nightmare, arguably a really well-designed fight, but no one does it, right? And I always say that the effort should reflect the output, or no one's going to put in that effort, or most people aren't. And Hollowed Sepulchre is a great example of a piece of content that to me is suffering a little bit by like just that notion that, it's agility, it has to be obnoxious and really slow, even though we just created a method that's not rooftops. Like, and rooftops make it stupid and slow. Okay, but I don't want to do rooftops, I don't. But nowadays I'm feeling like, do I want to put 80 hours into Hollowed Sepulchre or 100 hours into something that's brain dead? You know what I mean? Like, that's the problem.
You just watch a film. Yeah,
exactly. And I guess that's like, so in some ways, but I guess it's kind of opposite. And we'll touch on this in a moment. But the issues with old school RuneScape that sometimes crop up are like the opposite of issues with RuneScape 3. Like, old school RuneScape is a bit too conservative in some cases, like them never ever wanting to create a skilling method that devalues like tick manip, even though I like tick manip. But with RuneScape 3, it seems like totally the opposite, where they just power creep skilling methods that were otherwise balanced really, really well.
And like, the Sepulchre is a good example, and imagine that on like maybe 60% of the skills. And that's RS3 at the moment, which is really annoying. So it's like one of those ones where old school kind of hits it well on a lot of skills.
True.
Like, mining has the perfect balance of a skill, in my opinion. You can go do Motherload mine and chill and get some resources and get decent XP. You could get slower XP and just fully AFK like stars. You could go tick manip, gemstones or granite or whatever. And like, there's something for every type of player. You got the fully active, the semi AFK, the chill, and then the fully AFK. And like, a lot of skills have that type of thing for old school nowadays. They've kind of done that on a lot of different methods.
100%.
Yeah, then RS3 kind of does the opposite of that. They do a really intensive method that's like okay XP and kind of fun. And then they do a AFK thing that gives more XP than that for no apparent reason that you're just going to do over it. So they're just really, really incentivizing like not playing the game. And it's been like that for like maybe the last 5 years, 10 years, maybe, probably more like 5 to 7 years. And it's just got worse and worse and worse. And like, it just doesn't make sense to me. Like, I want to play the video game, but they keep making these updates that incentivize you not to play the video game because this new method that semi AFK is now better than the previous completely active method for no apparent reason. And that's caused the game to have a really weird gameplay loop, which I'm hoping they're going to fix with this whole year post removal of MTX, because there's a lot of skills that have some very fun methods. Like, for example, with Old School with Mahogany Homes, we have construction contracts, very similar to Mahogany Homes, same premise. And that's where you get like the big boy construction outfit from. And it's really, really fun. I think it's great. But like, it gets outshone by an AFK repeatable method of fort for free building.
Yeah.
And that's like best in slot XP now because they've power crept that to need like elder logs. Yeah, it's expensive to train, but construction is expensive to train anyway. So it's like, it's just the fastest XP in construction is now AFK. So like, why? Why do that? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I totally agree. And it's a perfect segue into that thing I mentioned a bit earlier, where something I noticed, because I agree with you, Old School RuneScape, the training methods in Old School RuneScape have not only improved over time, but they're great for most skills. Like there are very few skills in Old School RuneScape that don't have a multitude of different methods of engagement that define like your choices as a player, right? Like right now, I'm a little bit burnt out of Old School, so I'm waiting for sailing. So I've been for the past like 3 weeks playing other games while on my little laptop next to me here. I've been mining the prayer shards from the what is it? The Camtora mine?
Shards.
Yeah, the bone shards. Yeah, I have 380,000 of them right now. Yeah. So I'm trying to push to like 92, 93 prayer or whatever, maybe even higher if I can. And like that's pretty AFK. I click once every like minute or so, right? I did 99 mining by AFKing after getting burnt out from leagues. I got 99 mining, 99 fishing, and 99 thieving from doing the AFK in Varlamore. So really chill methods there that I chose. And on the other hand, for construction, I was stacking up a ton of mahogany planks, and I did the really active method for construction, like super, click intensive, really fun. If I want to be active there's so many different paths to take. For training, I think Old School RuneScape is in a really great place, and they keep making it better. I don't know if you've done Veil Totems yet for fletching, but they are incredible training methods. So much like nuance there too, with like, you could like, if you have the infinite bowstring or like the super bowstring spool thing that you can like craft your bows and fletch them and then string them while running to the next hotspot. There's so much like stuff you could, it's awesome. Anyway, the reason I bring that up is because RuneScape 3 to me has the opposite issue, where the training methods that I've seen are by and large very AFK or too AFK for my preference, and very good in that regard. But the actual like output of those of RuneScape skills, like the progression of the skill itself, is actually really well designed, like the mining and smithing rework, the archaeology as a skill, the actual like systems of the skill, what you get out of it is really cool. But the training methods to me kind of suck sometimes. While in Old School RuneScape, the training methods are really cool, but oftentimes the output is kind of stupid. Like mining and smithing is like 3 things.
Smithing for a room plate, buddy.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Like to me, it's like smithing is literally a skill for 3 things: repairing a zombie axe, repairing a god sword, and making some money from Giant's Foundry. Like, what the fuck, guys? It's a whole skill.
Yeah.
So, and it's so funny to see like the version of RuneScape 3, which is funnily enough super AFK, but you can make some really cool arm out of it. So they have opposite issues, which is why I think the games can kind of learn from each other's successes. So I kind of wanted to hear your opinion on that, like the actual design of some of these RuneScape 3 skills outside of their training methods. Like, what do you think of archaeology? That's a very interesting topic to me.
Archaeology is the perfect skill. They made it with the best experience curve in either game, in my opinion.
Mm.
Obviously, if you play it on Leagues, it's completely messed up because you're getting 16 times XP and stuff. But like on the release of Archaeology, it was my first skill that I ever raced after getting 200 mil all. And it was by far the most fun time I've had on either game ever, because they made the skill so well balanced that if you do the skill correctly, by the time you hit like level 40, you have just completed associate. So then you get your qualification, and then you do everything and progress through different, dig sites and mysteries and solve all of these cool things. Then you hit level 70. Oh, you just got the stuff needed for associate. So you complete that. And then you just keep going and going and going until you get Guildmaster at 99. And then you can make your like big boy Matuk and everything.
Mhm.
But like, if you use any type of speed up, like that's why MTX was so bad for something like Archaeology, is because to then do anything in the Archaeology skill, you then had to go back to the lower level places to get those qualifications and stuff. So the skill became way more unfun. But yeah, I think something like Archaeology is perfect because it's a gathering skill. It's very chill, and you can follow a time sprite if you want that moves every like 15, 20 seconds to get a little bit more XP, or you just completely AFK and chill and put your phone on the space bar. So whenever you get an artifact, it just continues to go until 15 minutes and you get logged out, right? It's got that really, really fun nature to it because it has a collection log built into the skill. So you're like filling up a collection log, you're buying upgrades, you're getting all these cool things unlocked, and you're going to all of these cool different places and mysteries and like quests, I guess, inside the skill. So it's like a gathering skill, but exactly what you would kind of imagine archaeology to be, where you're gathering a bunch, but then you're discovering a bunch at the same time. And there's only like one other thing I want to comment on that isn't necessarily archaeology, but it linked into what you were talking about before, where a lot of the skill design in RS3 is like AFK and stuff. I think that originated from mining and smithing rework. I think that's what caused so many things to be AFK, because they made everything rocketunities. You know what rocketunities are?
Of course. Which is to me, I noticed very similar to the time sprite, right? Every bit of time you click on a different thing and you get a little bump. Yeah.
If you think about any new skilling method in RuneScape 3, everything is rocketunities. You look at the new highest tier woodcutting method on Eternal Magic Trees that they released, it has a chopportunity, and you stand in this thing and you get a guaranteed bird's nest if you do it quickly, and then you get some more damage on the tree and more logs. So it's like everything is rocketunities nowadays, and that's like their whole design on like everything they're doing now, which just is okay because you get rewarded for being active every like 20 seconds, but then there's no fully active methods anymore.
Yeah.
It's just either AFK or rocketunities. That's it.
Well, that's exactly what I was going to bring up, actually, because to me, I kind of agree with just about everything you said about archaeology, even with the Leagues elements. Like, it was so obvious to me how much care was put into this skill. I think I mentioned this in the video where I was like, from like aesthetically, philosophically, and just from a progression standpoint, this is like the best skill in either game to me. Like, it is just like the most RuneScape skill, right? Like, you're uncovering the mysteries of the world, so it's super connected to the lore of the game if you're into that stuff. You are going to completely unique areas of the game for training that actually feel like areas of the game, you know, like that are fleshed out.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is so cool. The fact that every single dig site, apart from one where you go up, you're going down deeper and deeper and deeper. There's so much like awesome thematic areas in the skill too. My favorite areas in the game are like all in the archaeology skill, right? Like the area looks like hell, really the Saradomin dig site, the Armadillo one in the sky, like such cool zones.
A little fun fact, sorry to give a little tangent, but did you do the Caradet mysteries where you have to like open up the doors in the middle?
Yes.
So during the archaeology race, I was obviously like ahead, so we were trying to figure out these mysteries, and like trying to solve the door puzzle was very difficult. So what actually ended up happening in the way that we solved it and we put it on the wiki, I went there, gave it a little try for like 5 minutes, but didn't want to XP waste too much because I'm just wasting time trying to solve a puzzle. So I had someone in my chat that made a website that simulated the movements of the final puzzle. So like when you clicked one of the buttons, it done X, Y, and Z. So he simulated the whole of the puzzle on a website that me and my whole chat then tried to solve on the website while still getting archaeology XP without having to be there. So we ended up solving it on the website and then writing it all down in step-by-step guide, put it on the wiki, and then I went back there and then solved the mystery.
That's awesome. That's what an awesome like emergent event during the race too. Like that's so cool.
Yeah.
That must have been so exciting to like really like so much pressure, you know. And funnily enough, we're talking about not enough active training methods in archaeology too. That's an active training method, right? You're doing a whole puzzle while you're training the skill. It's very cool. But yeah, no, I love how connected that skill is to the game. I love the fact that they use the questing system of RuneScape, which is the most unique part of RuneScape, arguably, to facilitate skilling. It's so cool that they did that. It's just so fun. It was such a cool skill. Except the training method, which I just don't like. I don't like clicking and waiting. And that's the only thing. Like, I'd be totally fine if that was one of the things or just maybe the core of the skill. But if there was just a way for me to be active, and as you point out, not like the Rockertunity active where I'm half paying attention every 20 seconds.
The time sprite.
Yeah. I mean like actually active. Like I would be with, Hollowed Sepulchre. Maybe not that level of skill, but you know what I mean? Like where I'm constantly doing something or thinking about something. And I'm always thinking of ways of how I would do that with archaeology. But like I would wish that because and that's my like crazy copium where in like 5 years, let's imagine a world where RuneScape 3's reputation is kind of salvaged a little bit. The game is performing better. The old school RuneScape crowd isn't as bitter as they often are about the game. And they're much more amicable to it. I want a skill like archaeology, hell, just archaeology to make it to old school RuneScape because I think it would fit the world so well. It doesn't feel disconnected from the world like Invention would, in my opinion, in old school RuneScape. It feels super, super connected with some adaptation here and there because I know for a fact the old school RuneScape training method for archaeology would be a banger. I don't know how they would do it, but I know it would be awesome. So now we can get the best of both worlds from that. But I really do like archaeology, and the only thing I wish more of the relics that you dug up had more of a use to them, right? Like this is my like armchair game developer thing. I would love if every relic in the game, because they're all modeled, that's how they create the sprites in your inventory, you could just put them in your player-owned house. You could have like an archaeology collection. That'd be so cool. And some of them might have uses like
house in general needs to be
your whole rework in RuneScape 3. Yeah. See, because in old school RuneScape, they might do that because you go to your POH so much in old school RuneScape, right? Like having a whole archaeology collection there. And maybe some of the relics have like unique magical properties that like teleport you to a location or do something. I don't know. Could be really cool. I don't know. If there's a Jagex developer listening to this, write it down, But I don't. Archaeology is very interesting to me because it is the skill that came out before necromancy. And you kind of mentioned this a little bit. And I also mentioned this a little bit in my video. I didn't like necromancy that much. I did it a bit. I got it like level 95, but I just really didn't like it. And to be clear, I love the combat in RS3. I soloed Virago with Mage. I did so much shit with combat in RS3. I did hard mode, Sanctum. I did AOD. I did so much of the content. I loved it. I loved it so much. I just could not get into necromancy. I just didn't like the way you trained it. I thought it was really weird. How do you feel about like the ritual stuff and all that?
I think rituals are fine for necromancy. They felt more weird in Leagues than they do in the main game, that's for sure. Because the issue with Leagues was you were getting so much XP, you would literally do the rituals to try and upgrade your gear to like tier 20, and then you're already level 40, so then you're already on the back foot, and then all you're doing is upgrading gear, and you're not even like training and stuff. It's not like that in the main game.
That's true.
There's definitely like leeway.
I guess I'm sorry. I totally cut you off there. I'm so sorry. All I was going to say is that like the only issue I really have with rituals, I don't necessarily have an issue with them conceptually. The main issue is the whole skill felt like it took place in one area. Like,
That's an issue though.
it's
Yeah,
so
I
weird
agree.
to me where it's all just, and the city is really cool looking, but it's all in just this one city with one ritual zone. I don't know why they just had one of them. And then you're doing that all the way to 120.
Silly.
Yeah. And then on top of that, I just really, this is my core issue of the skill, because I think the gameplay is pretty good. I just really did not like the itemization and the armor progression for that skill. I did not like the idea that in a game like RuneScape, that's like every skill has always been about connecting to other things, and like, okay, you go over there, kill this enemy that drops this thing, and then you equip it with this other thing, and you create this like patchwork of gear and items that become how you identify your character, right? Like you wear your fighter's torso and your helm of Nita's Knot and your dragon boots, and you kind of look crazy, but that's a look, that's a vibe, that's an aesthetic. And with necromancy, it's just kind of like you wear one set of armor and you upgrade it the whole time, and you just do like 3 boss kills and you get the upgrade for it. And it's just like, really? That's it? Like, why not, like, instead of doing that, why not just add necromancy bosses like all around the world? Or like,
they should have.
Yeah, like I feel like to me that would be I hate the fact that every BIS item comes from a single boss. That's crazy.
That's the biggest issue.
Yeah. So you agree with me?
The biggest issue isn't even the tier 90 upgrades. I think upgrading the gear to tier 90 isn't that bad. I think it's fine, because like if you're just not wanting to do the necromancy route, you just do a bit of dungeoneering, get a chaotic weapon, which is tier 80 for like magic or something, then go kill Rax, and then you get a Nox staff, which is tier 90, and then you go kill Hellweir, get tier 80 gear, you know? Like you're going to do that in pretty much the same time as you upgrading all of your gear and stuff for necromancy, and go in and do all of the tasks they send you and whatever, honestly. So it's like not that bad to get gear for other styles if you just focus on one style and you're just going for the upgrade in that regards. But the biggest issue for necromancy is that if you look at all of the other tier 95 armors, tier 95 weapons and stuff, they all come from different bosses, and they typically come in 3 parts. So they're also pretty rare and they take a long time to obtain. So it's like, if you want to go get a Fractured Staff of Armadil, you have to kill the hard mode variant of Carapac, right?
Damn,
and then
damn
that's
straight.
a difficult boss, right? So you've got to learn that difficult boss, then you've got to kill it 150 times for one piece. If you're solo, if you're doing it in a group, then it's, 1 in 450 per pile, so it'll be even rarer. And then you have to get that 3 pieces and combine it. So you're going to be spending a long time to get that staff. And then the issue with necromancy is you literally just go to one boss, you get both the main hand, the offhand weapon, and you get all 5 pieces of the armor, all from the same guy that is a DPS dummy. He's not even difficult of a boss. He's not a challenge. He's not fun. He's boring, and he's AFK. It's like, they spent all of their time designing the skill and the abilities, and then they were like, oh shit, we actually need to add things to this skill in terms of bosses, and then they just made the bosses in 2 minutes or something. That's what it feels like. And I think Hermod as a boss is fine. He's designed kind of like Gorw's Dungeon 2, and he has like an entry level to learn a bit of PVM, improve your DPS rotations, kill him faster, etc. He's done well. Raziel is the issue, and they definitely should have created many bosses that had all different pieces of the armor, and you had to go kill all of the different bosses, because they're all coming from one killed Iron Man progression to some extent. Because what's the point in me going and doing Carapac and all of these high-end bosses for like one weapon, when I can literally go do Raziel to get best in stock gear for necromancy, and then go to any other boss in the game and do it with ease now, and then get gear for other styles? Like, you don't even get gear for other styles because of necromancy being so overpowered at tier 95. Like, and you just do necromancy and then get the other styles.
And that's exactly what I meant when I said like, and I echo that not just with the end stuff, but tier 95 stuff, like the stuff you get from Raziel, but also like the stuff earlier, while you said like, the time is very similar, but I guess my problem is less so like time investment and more just like, I guess, being true to diverse content, right? Like you said, like, oh, well, you could do that by going doing dungeoneering, getting your chaotic, or doing lead dungeons, getting your chaotics there with the dungeoneering tokens you farm. Then you go to Rax and get the staff there. And like, you're already listing more diverse content than I would do with Necro. You know what I mean? And I guess that's like, to me, like that's what's so exciting about RuneScape. That's what's so fun about putting piece of gear together and then going into a fight with what you have, like with what you've earned. That's what's so fun about itemization in old school RuneScape, especially before the end game, where you see a guide and you look at the stuff the guide recommends, and as an Iron Man, you maybe have like 70% of it. So you're like theory crafting. You're finding ways to make it still work for you when you grind it. That was what's so fun, putting my inventory together for like a TOA run or a Cox run or whatever, right? And that was, I guess, potentially the problem I had with necromancy. But again, I have less experience with it, so obviously I take your word for it more so than my own there. When it comes to like skills and combat styles, as compared to old school with RuneScape 3, what's your biggest issue and why is it summoning?
Summoning's not an issue in the main game. Summoning's fine in the main game. It was because you were getting like so much XP so quickly, and also not doing like any of the actual training methods that would give you charms. You know what I mean?
No, I guess what I was mainly being joking a little bit, but also like the summoning skill feels so weird to me, and it mainly feels weird because like 98% of the things in the skill feel like totally useless.
Oh yeah, I completely agree with that. Yeah. And I think ancient summoning just made it worse instead of making it better.
It was not fun to unlock in Leagues, let me tell you, but I did it.
Oh, it's not fun to unlock in general.
I did it because I wanted the demon. They gave you the critical strike boost because at that point, because I went mage in Leagues. I was a mage guy because I like maging, and I'm super not in it. Like I have so many issues with magic as a combat style in old school RuneScape from a progression standpoint that I'm like, I'm gonna do it in RS3 and see if they do it better. And they do. I do like magic more in RS3 from a combat perspective, but unfortunately the relic was kind of boring for magic, sadly, but it is what it is.
It was boring for most.
Yeah, it was true. But I did do most of the stuff. I did, as I said, I did solo Virago to get the tectonic armor, and then I was gonna get elite, and then I realized I had to do like 100 elite dungeon 2 runs, and I'm like, yeah, no, I'm not doing that in Leagues. So I ended up stopping there. But I got all that stuff, and I got the Fracture Staff of Armadil. I love the Karapak fight. Like such a good fight.
It's a really good boss.
It's a wonderful, wonderful fight. And just this total side note, I'm interested to hear what your favorite fights are. Honestly, in either game, just as a point of comparison, what are your favorite boss fights in RuneScape 3 as compared to old school RuneScape, and why, I guess?
So the issue with Leagues in RuneScape 3 was that they didn't even have like actual tasks for
bosses.
Some of the best bosses in the game.
True.
And that means that I don't even know if you've done the bosses that didn't have tasks.
Well, which ones? I'm curious.
My favorite bosses, my all-time favorite boss ever is Solak.
No, I didn't do Solak. I wanted to solo him actually.
Because he didn't have any tasks.
Yeah, he didn't have any tasks.
Like it's so dumb that they introduced so many tasks for so many bosses, but then just completely neglected some. I have a theory that they just hate rangers. The range relic was the worst one.
That was crazy.
Any boss that dropped range gear and weapons just didn't get tasks. Solak drops the tier 92 weapons for range, and Zamorak drops the tier 95 weapon for range.
Yeah.
He didn't have tasks either. So like, they just don't like range, man. I don't know.
I wanted to solo Solak. I thought he was going to, because I heard of him as a group boss. So I'm like, okay, so if Virago, the 2013 one is I straight up spent like 20 hours trying to learn how to do Virago. I'm like, okay, so if I'm struggling this much with the 2013 one, there's no way I'm going to do Solak.
You would have struggled less for Solak.
Yeah, and then I was told that like, oh no, they kind of rebalanced him, and he's actually way easier than Virago. And I'm like, fuck, I should have done that then. Maybe I'll go back and do that. Yeah, maybe I'll go back and do that. Yeah, I kind of want to do it because he looks awesome. I was watching Mulgo Kirby do him with necromancy. I'm like, this fight looks sick. And Virago,
so like best fight in the game.
Yeah, I mean that fight looked really cool because Virago, I was just ripping my hair out the whole time. Learning a solo Virago was just infuriating. But I did it. I did it just because I'm stubborn. Really, I just kind of put a brave face on.
Did you like
Virago? I liked killing him. That's what I'll say. I think the main issue I have with Virago is actually very similar to the issues I have with some old school RuneScape bosses that are a bit older, where most of the mechanics and the way you deal with them are not necessarily intended. Like doing Chambers of Zarek, every mechanic you're doing is frankly kind of breaking the fight a little bit. So it makes it very unintuitive to learn. So the process of learning it is super fucking annoying. But then when you get it, it's actually satisfying. So I was like livid learning Virago, especially with the aura shit. Oh my God. Waiting for my auras to come up was so annoying. And I had to like buy the reset tokens. So frustrating. And that did not help. So learning him, I hated it. But then when I actually got it and I was getting consistent kills and I was farming out my gear, I actually was having a great time. So yeah, so yeah, for sure. So, and I'm pretty sure with like duos and trios, it would actually be a really good time too. Much more chill because my God, some of the last phase, I'm assuming you've done Virago quite a few times, but
Virago's like 12 years old. Which is crazy.
He's so old, such an old fight. And you could tell, with some of the mechanics, but man, that guy slaps you.
If you compare it to other bosses that are 12 years old, like Calfight Queen, Calfight King, sorry. Calfight King and Rise of the Six came out in the same year as Virago did.
Yeah, and they're way jankier.
And Calfight King are like so janky.
Yeah.
I have a thing where I think 3 bosses were all ahead of their time for the time that they came out. Virago was the first one, and it was insanely good compared to any other content that came out around that time. And it was miles beyond, just so far ahead. And then later on in like 2016, Telos was released, and that was so far ahead any other boss that was ever released, and nothing came close to it for ages until Solak was then released in like 2021 or something. And yeah, that boss is insanely fun as well. And again, I think it was really ahead for its time. And when it comes to content still holding up decently, like Virago, shows a testament of like how good it was, because no one really bothers to kill Calfight King nowadays, or Rise of the Six and stuff like that, unless you just quickly want the gear or something. Like, it's one of the only old bosses that's still killed, and it's nice that they still have those old content that's still relevant and fun.
Yeah, and to be fair, I'm sorry, so I was just going to add a Virago. I was going to say, like, and to be fair, I think that if I was going into Virago and from what I've seen, every single YouTube guide, by the way, for solo Virago is them using necromancy. The only people I could find using magic are like people with like 55 viewers, and they were just like full Bis and Slot gear with like EDM music in the background. It wasn't a guide, it was just a kill. And like that's how I had to learn to do my rotation, because like every other guy was using necromancy. So to be fair, I think with necromancy, it would be less frustrating. But with magic, I had to go like full, like the armor, Sliske armor for crit strike, so I could out DPS the 4th phase because I kept getting nuked. So anyway, sorry. You were saying about other boss fights.
Yeah, it's just because Virago wasn't intended to solo, right? It's kind of like Cox, where you're doing these things to make it soloable. So it's a bit more janky in that regards. But it's nice that it holds up and you can do those things. So that makes it fun. So I think Solak is my all-time favorite boss, but I do very much like Sanctum. I think they made that really well, and it's very good for like recent times. They made the telegraph in squares finally, because the amount of bosses that they made like circle abilities on a grid-based game with squares, like you would be standing on the corner of a square and you wouldn't even be in the animation of a circle, but you'd still get hit by things. And that was like really frustrating and always a pain point for me, especially when people were learning a boss and they die and they're like, I wasn't even standing in that. And it's like, yeah, you weren't, but you were,
Yeah. And I will say that like, it's so funny to me to engage with this kind of discourse about this, because for the longest time when I was playing WoW, something I always advocated against them doing is adding visual clarity to certain fights by adding those like really clear telegraphs, because I felt like it was more worthwhile like retaining like immersive mechanics and just making those better and more visible and more intuitive to understand, rather than just like resulting in like a fucking like UX like Photoshop square to tell you where to go. But that doesn't apply to RuneScape because RuneScape is tile based. So you could genuinely be standing somewhere and still being getting hit. There's no other way around that. The ability to me that is like the best example of this is Sunshine, the magic ultimate ability, where I'm like 3 tiles to the right of it and I'm still inside it because of the way it's a circle and it hits all the corner tiles. So I'm just like, what is happening with this ability? Am I getting the buff? Because I see it on my buff bar, but I wasn't sure if I'm not standing in it clearly visually. So anyway, so I definitely agree with you that the telegraphs at Sanctum, not only did they allow them to make a much faster paced fight, I think, because it was so clear, but man, what a cool fight. All the fights are really cool.
Yeah,
but
super fun.
Nakatra is sick. That's actually, I was going to say like, there were like, I think 4, I like most of the fights, by the way, that I've done that aren't like Dagonoth Kings or whatever in RS3, but the 4 that really stuck out to me, and I would love to hear your opinions on them, in maybe no particular order, is Sanctum, Hard Mode, Nakatra. I think I even call it out in the video. I'm like, this place kind of blew me away. It took me like 6 hours to get her down on hard mode because I was going in with the freaking Hellwar wand. There was like a 9-minute, it was 9-minute kill. It was crazy, but what an awesome fight. So cool. Mechanics were really well done. They're so intuitive too. Like you could just get what's happening in the fight instantly. And it was fun getting the rhythm of the movement down really well. I love how like your surge and dive reset if you dodge the ability. That's such a smart thing to do there.
They did that with Carapac as well.
Yes, they did. I was going to say, that's the other fight that really stuck out, especially hard mode Carapac. The final phase is a ball buster, but what an awesome phase. The music is really great.
Is one of the best things in either game.
Agreed. I think the time warp mechanic is what makes the first 3 phases really fun, because otherwise they'd be kind of boring because it's kind of just the same thing. But because it's so like DPS centric, like you're just doing a crazy rotation. Something I ended up learning just totally by accident in that fight is that you can
a meta.
Yes, I was like, okay, do they stack? Because I could do both of them in this case, and I ended up doing that. I'm like, I'm just going crazy right now. It's because I had the Sanctum wand at that point too, so I was pumping. Yeah, it was really, really cool. That mechanic is fucking cool as hell. You could do so much crazy stuff with it. And then the final phase really tests you. And initially I was just getting obliterated until I finally understood how like you could power burst the vitality one of them to raise their health. Just really cool mechanics like that stick out in my brain. Then the third fight was Raksha. I really enjoyed, actually. I think it was
Raksha is one of my favorite bosses too.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I'm glad, because dope soundtrack, cool theme. I love the voice lines in that fight. Honestly, very cool, very memorable. And just like I feel like that Raksha is a fight that could just genuinely be an old school RuneScape with very minimal changes.
I said that when it was released, because a lot of people struggled with it because it was the first boss in RS3 in a long time that actually required you to consistently prayer flick all 3 different styles.
Yeah.
And it's one of those ones where a lot of people struggled because they were just not used to doing that, because most things you just flick between soul split and whatever they're attacking you with or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Whereas Raksha, you're just continuously changing, and then every mechanic of Raksha could be done in old school. Yeah. Because you could take chins to go and kill the
shadow
blobs,
pools,
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then like there's so many different things with Raksha that would just work in old school. The towel swipe you just move out of, right? The only thing is he wouldn't be able to stun you. But like if it was something coming down from the ceiling, like the big fireball, it just wouldn't stun you. It'd just come down from the ceiling and you'd have to run away.
Yeah.
It was
I completely agreed.
Oh, sorry, carry on.
No. I was just agreeing with you. I was just completely agreeing with you.
Oh, right, okay. Yeah. It was when it was released, it also was one of the bosses that they didn't even speak about. They just kind of like shadow dropped it a random December a few years back. And yeah, it was so much fun to just dive into that boss and farm it, because there's so many little intricacies you could learn with it as well. And like just knowing how many like blobs to pick up in the last phase before you empower yourself and stuff for like optimal damage, etc. Like so much fun for sure.
I was gonna say that blob mechanic is really cool. Another really just fun mechanic, and it synergizes really well with the movement of RuneScape 3 where you could do like a surge dive on both directions, right? And pick up a ton of them at the same time. Like really cool mechanic. And I love mechanics, and I always say this, and I love when Old School RuneScape does this too. I love mechanics where you are rewarded for doing them correctly, not just by not taking damage, but by like doing damage back or getting some kind of buff, is really, really fun to me. Like doing a great Doom punish in the recent Doom Maka Huatel fight, and stuff like that. Love all that kind of stuff where you can like make the boss hit himself sometimes. Just really cool. Araxor step under in Old School, really, really cool. So yeah, Raksha, really great. And the final fight that really stuck out to me in my memory is and I didn't do him enough, really. I only did him a couple times just because it was fun, honestly. I think he only had the one Leagues task, was the Ambassador.
Oh, okay. Yeah, 83.
Yeah. That's a really cool fight. I love the mechanics of that fight, and I really like just, I was lucky. I did all the EDs like 1, 2, and 3. I love the final fight of 1, but everything else about 1 is a little bit, I don't know. But like, it's a bit crazy, but I love the final fight of 1. The dragon is really cool. And I don't know if you got this from the dragon, as in like, I don't know if you drew the same conclusions I did, but very Olm inspired on the dragon.
I guess so, yeah.
I maybe just visually of it being like a dragon's head with both of his arms, and each arm does a specific mechanic, I guess. He like lifts his right one.
I'm not sure which one came out first.
I think Olm came out first.
When was Cox released?
2017, or January 2017. Did ED1 come out before? Am I insane?
No, it came out in 2018 for ED1.
Okay. So I could see there being some
level of could have been inspired by him, yeah.
I got that vibe, and I really like that fight. The music is really cool too.
Going on the back and killing the crystals.
Very cool. Fun. Yeah, really, really cool. ED2 is great too, honestly. Very chill. That one is like the chillest one of the 3, I feel. I'm just like vibing out during ED2. Very fun. Although I really hate the Blackstone Dragon phase where he just jumps up for like 4 minutes. And you're just like waiting. And then when I got my full BIS, I came back, or BIS that I could get, honestly. And I came back and I just skipped that phase with just DPS. That was sick. That was sick. And then ED3, I did that one. And man, what a cool vibe for Ambassador. I love like how dark everything is. Like I love the dragon coming back from ED1 and like healing you during that phase with the music coming. Yeah. Very, very cool. So that one stuck out to me too. But honestly, I like a lot of the fights in RS3. I kind of said this in the video. I'm like, really, really clearly they put a ton of time into this. And the fights that I really didn't connect with as much were, I didn't like Vorkath all too much. It was really weird.
Vorkath is the worst fight in the whole entire game.
Yeah, it's just really weird. It's very hard. But just because it feels like Nex in OSRS, where I'm just taking damage and I hate it. Like, I guess that's just the vibe I got from it. I just didn't like it. You can go.
Sorry.
No, you go.
Okay. So when it comes to Vorkath, I was playing Old School at the time of its release. So I was like, okay, I'll give the boss a try, because Sanctum came out, and I gave that one a try. And I was like, oh, this is an amazing boss. Loving it. So good. And I also tried out, Gate of Elindus when that came out. I was playing Old School at the time. So I came over to try those bosses. I came over to try Vorkath, and I played it for 2 hours and never came back, and I didn't kill it anymore, because it is by far the worst boss they've made in the last 10 years or something. There is no visual clarity. It is literally just a mess, and different mechanics can override others, and you don't even see the like stuff on the floor for one of the mechanics because it's being overridden by another mechanic, and you just get hit by something. And then he only has one voice line to tell when he's going to use his finger of death on you, which hits like 7k, and he says it after he uses it.
Yeah, that's cool.
So like you can't even stop him using it. So it's like there's so many issues with that fight. It is terrible. Sorry, carry on.
No. I kind of agree. I did not like that one. I thought it was just weird. Another fight I did, and this might be heresy for a long time RS3 player, so I apologize in advance for the hot take incoming. But it mainly is just that it hasn't aged well, in my opinion. It just really hasn't, in my opinion. But for the time, if I'm I thought it came out in like 2016. It came out in 2014, and I was like, "What is Araxi?" Yeah. Where I'm like, I'm looking at this fight, and I'm like, this fight for the time is probably like, it's just it's insane. Like there's 3 different paths. Each one has unique mechanics. There's 4 phases. The spider comes down and kills the other spider. That's nuts. Like, how did they do this in 2014? Like, really great. But then you're like, okay, but what are you doing most of the fight? Well, you're waiting for the web to burn most of the fight, or you're waiting for the correct path to come out, which is time gated unless you have the hard achievement diaries completed. And it's just like, oh man, I hate that. I hate all of that. But I really appreciate, just how, I guess, just I'm in some ways kind of ahead of its time, even though the webs just need to burn down. Like when you get them to 0 health, just burn them down.
So Darkness phase used to need 2 slams to break the wall, and they made it so it only requires 1 slam to break the wall. The acid and the web burn have not been updated though, so they need like the same treatment of like Darkness path. So instead of it needing, like 60% or taking ages to get to 60% of the acid, just make it so it either requires half of that or charges twice as fast.
Yeah.
And then like with the burn in the web, just burn it twice as fast or, instantly burn it. Who cares?
Yeah, but you get the fight to 5k health because that's when he starts healing. And then the web becomes targetable and you can just kill it and move past, something like that. Yeah. Like really that kind of stuff would really alleviate it. The only other mechanic, because I like everything else about the fight, I really do, especially the last phase. I really like the last phase, but the only other mechanic I really hate is, and I know everyone says it, it's the fucking mirrorbacks. Now that I know that they come out in an order, I forgot who said this, but it was some guy in the RS guy clan chat said this, and whoever you are, thank you, because I did not understand how they work, but they do come out in order, which makes it a lot easier to deal with your burst. But there are, especially with the book,
second, first.
Yeah, exactly. But my God, there's just times where you're just getting boned by these fucking mirrorbacks, and it's like because of the power creep that happened. Yeah, you have to just do the skip, but it's like, how do you do that with magic? I'm sure there's a way, but like
hit hard.
Yeah, hit hard. Yeah, I know. Got to press the Armadillo spec. But beyond that, I do really respect that fight. I feel like they just needs a little bit of quality of life to bring it, to punch it up. And I honestly have the same opinion about some OSRS fights, which is a great segue to ask you, what about OSRS fights? Which ones really stuck out to you as a RS3 player coming in and becoming an OSRS player?
I like Theatre of Blood probably the most out of any boss, I would say. Probably Theatre of Blood the most, because I think boss is like really fun, and you just continuously fighting bosses, and each of the boss has like its own challenge and its own way of solving or whatever. I like TOA as well, but like TOA is made a bit less fun with like the monkey room and stuff like that, right? Whereas there's no downside to TOB. So I think TOB is my favorite encounter, but I do like all of the raids. Like in general, I think they're all fun and I do them all and enjoy them all. But yeah, I think TOB is my favorite fight as a whole. But I guess if we're going for one specific fight, maybe Yama.
Yama is great. Yama's a wonderful fight.
I think it's fun because it really utilizes a lot of the things that Old School does really well. Like really utilizes the movement and all of that to its fullest, I would say. Like there's not that many bosses that you're that hands-on with its mobility and stuff, with like last phase with the the butterfly or whatever they call it. I don't know. But yeah, like those ones are really fun because of that. Obviously, there are other bosses that you do a lot of moving in, like Cox, where you're moving the head, but like it's not quite the same type of movement.
Oh, for sure. I think like because, and I'm hesitant to say this, I've not spoken to Maikeru, who I think was the real brains behind Olm, but if I recall correctly, but I want to say the reason for that is because one was intended and the other one isn't. I think they design fights nowadays with a lot more intention for movement. While at that time it was kind of uncharted territory with what the players can do with how they manipulate fights. And honestly, for as much as learning how to do solo Cox and how to do trios too, because I learned to do mage skip first and foremost, which for people that know Chambers as Eric, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe some people disagree. It's the hardest role. It's like the only role on Ulm that actually like
in a group.
Yeah, in a group. Yeah. You know, it really, it's like the whole head and which is the majority of the fight revolves around you doing that well and appropriately and correctly. So learning that was ripping my hair out because again, it's super unintuitive. You don't know what the fuck is going on until you start breaking down the attack pattern of Ulm, which is like there is like no telegraphs. You have to just kind of read it.
It's
like,
weird. And then like if the hand's crippled, you don't know whether you've set it when you're learning. Like, is it set? Is it not set? And then it uncripples the hand. You're like, okay, it's not set because it's done an ability. Like,
Exactly. So for me, that was infuriating, kind of in the same way Virago was. But when I got it, and you know, now I'm fine with it or whatever. But with Yama, on the other hand, and some other fights that do this really well too, I feel like they're really conscious about how movement influences it. And obviously, as we've seen with Yama especially, I don't know, did you watch the recent RoboFly stuff that came out?
No.
Dude, it's nuts. Like some guy like essentially cracked the Konami code for Yama and like managed to just completely change the way you engage with a fight. Obviously, they patched it now, I think. But maybe by the time that this episode comes out, maybe they'll unpatch it because I know some people are upset about that. Regardless, you can do some crazy stuff with it, with movement in old school RuneScape. I think people are very critical of tick systems that don't play OSRS, but I think OSRS is like it just embraced the tick system so much to the point where it has become satisfying, you know, to master and stuff. So I definitely respect the Yama answer. I also love Yama. Have you tried out the new Doom fight? The Doom of Makahapa?
Only a tiny bit, yeah.
That's another really great one, in my opinion. I think it's
I haven't
awesome fight.
delved into that.
Oh, good one, yeah. I love the Doom. I had a great time with it. With just, my God, again, that Delvate gets so hard, but it was really, really fun. What do you think of like? And I always ask my guests this question, and I always love hearing their response. But we'll lead up to the question. So first, I'll just ask, what do you think of like the Inferno and the Colosseum?
Okay. I have one more boss that I really enjoy.
Oh, yes. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Yep.
So that's it. Vard is fun. Cool boss.
Vard is awesome.
When it comes to Inferno, it was very fun to learn. It was definitely like one of those challenging things that is fun to solve the waves and like see your progression. Because like I was streaming it all, so I got very bad Jad hands on Zuck. I knew I could get the fight done and I knew I could kill him. But then you'd always just make one little tiny mistake because you're streaming in front of like hundreds of people and you're like, oh shit, I've just got hit by a Zuck hit and I'm dead, you know? So I ended up getting to Zuck dying on like healers, then the next kill getting to Zuck again, and then dying to a second set spawning. And then I got to Zuck again and then got it on that time.
Nice.
So I got to the point where like I knew the waves good enough to like consistently get there. And that alone was the most fun feeling in the whole of my learning process. Because I got to Zuck quite early one time, but like scuffed my way there. And then also then died to, I think it was like healers at that time again. But like I then got to the point where I can comfortably solve, you know, and that really, really is a rewarding system. And I think obviously it sucks when you're 1.5 hours in and you die to the final boss, but like the feeling you get when you finally get that cape is like unmatched for like any type of drop is not going to give you that feeling that you got for like obtaining that cape. I definitely would say it's not something that I would want to farm. I know a lot of people do it for like Slayer XP and stuff like that, but like I don't think Inferno is something that I would personally enjoy farming as content, but I think it's the best piece of content in the game to learn a bunch of mechanics to do with positioning, movement, prayer flicking, all of that. And like it's definitely something that everyone should do one time in their like old school career for sure. When it comes to Colosseum, I actually haven't done Colosseum because I stopped playing my group Iron Man actively when Varlamore came out, and I did like the start of Varlamore a little bit, but didn't get into the Colosseum because I was playing my Chunk Man, and I was enjoying my Chunk Man so much and spending all my time on that and just like AFK fishing or something on my Iron Man that has my Inferno and stuff. But I plan on doing Colosseum on my new main probably at some point. Once I get there on that account. And that should be quite fun. It looks enjoyable. Obviously, I haven't done it, but obviously a lot more fast-paced than the Inferno, so you don't lose as much time when you die. And I think that will make it a little bit easier for me.
Colosseum reminds me, this is one of the cases of maybe OSRS learning something or taking something from RS3, because the Colosseum really reminds me of the RS3 version of the Inferno.
Okay. Because it's a similar amount of waves, right?
Yeah, similar amount of waves, but also you get loot on each wave. You know, obviously in Colosseum you lose the loot if you die, but unlike in the RS3 version of the Inferno, and also you get checkpoints in the RS3 version of the Inferno on normal mode.
Yeah,
it's a bit more forgiving in that way, but certainly it kind of reminds me of keep it shorter, keep it less frustrating if you're not 2 hours in and you die. In that way, but beyond that. The reason I bring these pieces of content up is actually just for a more general question. So I'm going to keep this trend going of asking everyone who plays Old School Runescape this question. I'm speaking to the viewers here. So you know how in Old School Runescape, there are two ways that damage is calculated. You have damage that's on animation, like that it's already calculated as soon as the animation begins. So you have to predict what to pray. And you have damage that's on impact, which very self-explanatory. Scurrious, right? Hits you, you pray. If you're praying correctly, you're fine.
TOA.
Yeah, exactly. So obviously, objectively speaking, one is a lot more intuitive than the other because the other one requires pre-existing knowledge, while the other one is, the on hit is more reactionary, right? Like you're driven by your reaction speeds and just understanding color coding and all that kind of stuff. The part that's interesting is the fact that Old School RuneScape uses both of these systems. And while generally speaking, they lean much heavier into on hit nowadays with new bosses, they still tend to sometimes use the other. And to me personally, I don't know what the solution to this is, but it's very unintuitive and it's kind of weird for a lot of players, especially, for example, my group Ironman partner who has never played RuneScape before. He was coming in and he was infuriated with some of the early content he was doing because he was like, how the fuck do I know? Is it on hit? Is it not? Do I just have to die a couple times to figure it out? Like, it's just really frustrating. And I totally empathize with that. Do you feel like this is an issue, or is it just kind of like fine that the way it is?
Yeah, it's a weird one, isn't it? It's the whole like MMO being so old that it's got a mix of different things. RS3 is all on hit with EOC.
Yes.
So it's just blanket across the board. And I like that a lot because, it's always going to be the same. But I don't know whether on hit would even work that well on a lot of bosses and content in Old School. So it's a hard one because there is places that arguably it's better to be on cast than on hit anyway. So it's like, yeah, it's a tough one to try and balance. I don't think they can go back and just change every other old piece of content to be on hit nowadays because everyone's so used to it being on cast. So it kind of has to be this amalgamation of both. It's like on RS3 when you walk through one area and it's all shiny and new, and then you're literally into the next area and it's like 2007 again.
Yeah, you're in your nil.
There's a lot of stuff you get like that in these old games, and I think that's the thing with a game that gets consistent updates and is a live service game. There's always going to be inconsistencies from old metas versus new metas and stuff. And
I completely agree with you. The part that throws me through a loop sometimes is that what it feels like sometimes is, I love the analogy you brought up where it's like you walk through RS3 and you see all these different patchworked aesthetics that the game has filtered through over the time, right? And I love that analogy. In Old School RuneScape, when it comes to this damage profile system, it's like if that was the case in RuneScape 3, but they were consciously adding new content that looked like 2007. You know what I mean? Like sometimes I'm just confused by the choice made. Like a great example is actually in the Colosseum. That's part of why I brought it up. And I brought this up to Josh, is in gaming too, where I'm like, the Manticore. Are you aware of that mob in the Colosseum? Yeah. So
the different attacks.
Yeah, the 3 different attacks. They come in like a set order, and they're not on hit. They're on animation, and the projectiles look almost identical to the Leviathan projectiles, which are on hit. So
Yeah.
I'm wondering if there's a single person that engaged with this piece of content that didn't like just die to the Manticore at first, just to learn if it's on hit or not. And to me, is that good design that you kind of just have to like intuit something?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So to me, it's like, I wish that if this is like just a two eras situation, we could leave one behind, or maybe push to leave one behind, but maybe not change it, like change the old content, but just kind of like move on from it. I don't know. Maybe that upsets a lot of people because there's a lot of nuance and depth that comes from something being on animation. You're kind of thinking a lot more than you are like looking, I guess. But I don't know. To me, it's a very interesting thing. Not to say it's like game ruining or anything, but it is very interesting to talk about when it comes to just the way bosses are designed in old school RuneScape, because there's a lot of interesting content down the pipeline, including sailing. What do you think of sailing?
It doesn't seem to have much.
Oh, really? How so?
Like, the gameplay loop for sailing feels a bit boring.
Mm-hmm.
Like, for sailing in general, I think it'll be a fine new skill for the first 70 levels. But then if it's still just going to be the same thing, they don't really have anything announced for like training. I don't know whether they're going to, but like in their post that they posted about sailing, about the release of it and like the mechanics of it, if I'm going to be doing like missions to deliver stuff in my boat and then also just like salvaging stuff from the sea in my boat or whatever, like the whole time, then like, isn't that a bit of a boring 99? Like, I don't know. It feels like the training of sailing is lackluster and it doesn't really have like, by the sounds of it, any method that can be like super engaging, unless like random metas are found that haven't been spoken about. But I don't know. It feels like it's a fine skill to have. And I think it will have some cool uses. It will give some cool resources with some new stuff in there. And like, there'll be like exploration will be fun, but will training it be fun? You know what I mean?
Yeah. To be fair, I think that the supposedly, and I'm not sure about this, but supposedly the active training method is supposed to be like the Barracuda trials.
Yeah, but like, I don't know. Doing Barracuda trials all the way to 99 also doesn't sound the most fun content in the world.
Yeah,
right?
I hope that like there's a like my so there's two things I'd say on this, right? I want there to be better output for training, right? We don't know if this is the case or not, but I would love if the Barracuda trials had some kind of like incentive outside of XP to do them, you know? That would be kind of fun, whether it be like points you can get for like, I don't know, a shop that gives you cool stuff, or like maybe you could get a drop at the end, kind of like Hollow Sepulchre, right? Because that's what the content is super inspired by. I know Mod Husky, I think, has designed the Barracuda trials. So like it's so that's what I'd like to see from it. Who knows? I will say this though about the training methods, because I kind of agree with what you're saying in regard to it will probably get boring. I don't know if there's a single skill that doesn't get boring at training. But you know, beyond that, I'm sure it'll get tedious and all that kind of stuff. I am happy that we are at least getting, what is it, 4 or 5 training methods that all seem to be within a different niche of like engagement. Like you have the high intensity, you have the low intensity, and you have the middle ground, right? At least the skill is launching with those, rather than like a lot of skills had to get those within the next like 10 or 15 years, you know?
Yeah. I think, I guess it's not like me saying the training method itself is boring. More so, I guess, that it seems like those training methods are the same from 1 to 99.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
A lot of skills, you go to new places, you unlock new things, you do new methods, and you're doing maybe like 6 different methods across the whole time of like 1 to 99. And I feel like this might just be like one method all the time. And like, that's what will get boring to me because I'm not mixing it up, you know?
I
guess I
agree with
could
that.
mix it up in terms of like, oh, I'll do like semi AFK or I'll do active. But like, if I want the best XP, then I'd be doing the same thing all the way, which I think is why I hated necromancy, right? So
for sure, I think that's a good point. I do hope that there's enough diversity within the individual training methods, right? Like if shipwreck salvaging is just the same thing every single time with no change, it will get boring, right? Like, and it's the same to the same extent like woodcutting. It just kind of feels like a woodcutting thing. But also like there is opportunity to potentially make something kind of a little bit more interesting, just even if it's just environmentally, right? Like in some kind of hazard or area or specific thing that you can earn from it that makes it a little bit more exciting to open up the salvage or stuff like that really adds that. Because to me, RuneScape skills, they are two things, right? They are input, which is like how you do them, and there's output. And by and large, I think the most important part of a RuneScape skill sometimes is the output, because anything gets boring after 150 hours. But as long as you're getting something super, super tangible, that's what makes it a little bit more okay, right? The biggest problematic skills in old school RuneScape are those that lack tangible, interesting outputs. Like skills like agility, to me, are examples of skills that are essentially useless. Like getting the agility to 99, who cares? Beyond your, I mean, no, not even the skill cape means anything apart from like being a flex, I guess. Smithing, mining, a lot of Maxcape, right? Yeah, that is actually really good. But like, there's a lot of skills that just don't scale or don't reward something really cool. Or there's also some skills that only start rewarding stuff cool later on, right? Slayer. The first decent task is level 75 with gargoyles, and arguably the tasks don't become decent until 85 with abyssal demons, right? 85 levels for a skill that's so slow early on, kind of miserable for a lot of early game accounts, right? I think sailing, if anything, will be the reverse of Slayer sometimes, where it's like it's going to be really fun initially and maybe peters off towards the end.
That's what I think. Yeah. Like the novelty will wear off and then you're doing the same thing and you're like, oh, I'm level 80 now and I have still been doing these Barracuda trials. I'm bored now. Like,
I really hope not. But at least we know for a fact that the output for sailing is going to be really good, right? Like the rewards seem really great. And at least, and that is alone makes me a bit more excited. And I've always been a bit of a sailing, defender, I guess you could say. I don't think it's going to ruin the game or anything. I think generally speaking, sailing will be one of the better skills. I don't know if it'll be the best skill. My favorite skill in the game is construction. But that's, again, because of how awesome the player on house is. But
the rewards.
Yeah, the rewards are really, really great. And I like, different training methods fine too. But, and I like magic for the utility. But regardless, to me, sailing has always felt, as far as excited as I am for it, and I think it will be really cool, it's always felt like a third or fourth new skill for old school RuneScape. Because to me, the concept is so out there and so I guess nutty that to make it really work exceptionally well, I think they need to take a huge risk with the way you train it. But because it's the first new skill, I feel like they're playing it really safe with the training method. It's like, okay, well, got to have the active one, we got to have the AFK one, and maybe something in between, and that's it. We don't want to do something too crazy, but like, it's sailing. Like you are on a boat in RuneScape. That is nuts. You kind of have to, I feel like, do something a little bit out of the ordinary, make it a little bit different than what someone would expect, because that could really lay the foundation to a better future for skilling in RuneScape, right? To have higher skill training methods like Hallowed Sepulchre be a little bit more standard than once in a blue moon we get a training method that requires more than like a pencil's IQ,
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, it's a hard one because I don't think I'm against sailing. Obviously, I think new skills whenever they come out on RS3 are like the most fun time in the game.
Yeah,
I think new skills are very healthy for the game as well, and they can help the economy. They can help, enjoyment factors and link into other skills and reward whatever. Right. So I think they're very, very healthy to add to the game. But sailing being the first one definitely leads it to be awkward because it's one of those skills that I think has like the dungeoneering effect of RS3, where it can easily become that everyone just calls it a mini game and not a skill because it doesn't feel like a skill because it's so disconnected and so different to every other skill. And that can then give it potentially a bad rep, and then also make it scary for anyone to vote for another skill in the future because they don't want more like disconnected skills type deal.
That would be the worst case scenario, right? If sailing is not perceived well, then that kind of tanks future skilling opportunities. Because to me, it's like sailing, if it's good and people enjoy it after a year or two, that's what's going to give us the opportunity to finally rework mining and smithing. Fucking please. No, but maybe actually. But the point is that
my chunk man for mining and smithing is I'm doing it right now.
Oh, really? Yeah. Are you desperate for a mining and smithing rework?
Well, yeah, I've already done the majority of it, but my 99 mining grind is 2,500 hours.
Oh my god! Man, so. Oh my god! Yeah, I mean, Jagex, hurry up! You know, we're waiting for that rework.
No, I'm nearly done. So
okay, you're good. Then.
Rework it now. We're fine.
Okay, no, ignore that then. Focus on agility.
So
maybe.
Yeah, maybe I'm a weird one. I'm saying like certain skills are boring and stuff, and then I'm doing one skill for thousands of hours. But like, I guess like that's me choosing to do that, and with the limitations and stuff to make it different. But like from a standpoint of skills, the worst skill in the game is smithing, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree.
Like, regardless of chunk man or anything. Like, just, why is a rune plate body that's literally tier 40 armor at 99 of a skill? Like, you look at 99 on any other skill and what it rewards you with is so good, and like so many fun methods or big loot or whatever it is, and then you look at smithing and you're like, oh.
Yeah, like, finally a rune plate body. Yes.
Yeah.
For my smithing locked ultimate Iron Man. Yes.
Yeah. So weird.
It's awful. It's awful. And there's a couple skills I think like that, maybe not as bad as smithing, but there's a couple skills like that to me that really lack in the full kind of scope of reward because they've become outdated, right? Like, and the part that always frustrates me when sometimes dealing with some RuneScape, old school RuneScape players in the community is, you know, they're super like, keep it old school, but they're also like hate power creep and all this kind of stuff. But it's like, do you guys not see that skills like mining and smithing is a great example, have been completely power crept for the past 15 years? Like, we need to acknowledge the fact that, like, if you don't want power creep, we can go back and we can like change certain things or add things to completely devalued pieces of content to bring more value to them without ruining the old school vibe. Because I think if we're talking old school vibe, there's nothing more old school than making your own set of armor in an RPG from 2002, like, or 2004. Like, that is premium old school content, right? That's premium nostalgia. Yeah. And right now we're just not getting that from smithing at all. Like as much as I think Giants Foundry is good for its ability to like integrate into making smithing something more economically interesting for Iron Men in the early game, like, we need something like greater for this. And that's why, I'm always advocating for changes in this environment. Definitely agree with that. Maikeru, the last question I want to ask you is a bit open-ended. Take your time with this one if you want, but it's kind of a double-sided question. If you had something to change about RS3, what would it be and why? And if you had something to change about OSRS, what would it be and why? And the final part of that is, if you had to add something from RuneScape 3 to OSRS, what would it be, and vice versa? So I guess 4 questions.
I want more skilling bosses in RS3, that's for sure. 100%. And not skilling bosses that are locked behind 80 necro and stuff. Like, just give skilling bosses that you can do at all levels that scale, like Temporos and stuff. Just give us fun ways to train the skills that are active instead of opportunities. So give us some bosses, make them decent XP, give some loot. Like, Old School does it really well with the like balancing of it. Like, you get a bunch of resources from fishing from the fishing boss. You get a bunch of resources from runecrafting from the runecrafting boss. Like, just do stuff like that. And I think that's a huge thing they can take away. I think they done really well with the newest skilling boss. I think Gate of Olyndus is great. They made it well. It's a fun boss. It has some good rewards, like very, very powerful rewards. But the issue with Gate of Olyndus is, like, it's just such a high level that it's locked behind that by the time you get there, you can literally not even get the drops that you need by the time you're like 99 in mining and stuff from it. But if it started at level 1 and scaled, then you could get the drops at lower levels and benefit from them for longer and stuff. And I think that would be really good. In terms of old school content that I'd like to see, I think smithing is like a good example of something for old school that I think needs to potentially be looked at. Mostly because it's like so outdated, and I know like it's part of the charm or whatever, but like some things just should be updated in my opinion, so that they feel a bit better, because they've added all of these new methods and new loot and new fish, for example, for fishing, like anglerfish and stuff like that, right? But they haven't added new things to smithing, even though they've added a bunch of new things to mining, right? And then they've added amethysts and stuff, but then that's crafting and fletching. Like they're not adding the stuff to the smithing skill. Essentially, they're adding it elsewhere, which is fine. But I think that needs some love specifically. Outside of the smithing skill for old school, I think um I'm not 100% sure what else I would like change at that level. Like I think that is the main crux for things for me. But I do think that when it comes to what they're doing so far, they need to keep doing that. So like Val totems, for example, are a really good kind of thing that I would want to see to happen to other skills, where there's a bunch of useless items in fletching, aka unstrung bows or even strung bows and stuff. What can you do with them? A bit of money, sure, but like there's no use to them really. So giving a use to those by getting more XP from them and like getting a bunch of rewards from them, from the loot that you get from the offerings and stuff, like that's perfect. They need to do that with more skills. There's a lot of junk items in the game, and removing those junk items, I think, is probably a priority alongside the smithing changes. Like they could even do it with smithing with the Giant's Foundry, right? They kind of got rid of those junk items, but they didn't really fix the skill, right? So yeah, I think removing all of the junk items, they're doing well. They need to keep doing that, and then yeah, help smithing. Outside of that, I think that's probably it. And then the third question that you asked
Mhm.
was content that could be ported over.
Yeah, between either game. Like, what could one game take from the other and vice versa?
Raksha going over to old school would honestly be really good, in my
Mm.
opinion. I think they could definitely take the best of bosses and have them work in the other game. I think RS3 actually did that with the Sanctum of Rebirth. I think they took so much from old school with that. They made it into a boss dungeon where it's boss, like TOB. And they made it so it was like square based mechanics and telegraphed in similar ways to old school. They even made the like area look a bit like TOA style, and also
Yeah.
had like the squares on the floor to symbolize actual tiles and stuff, which I think old school does well in a lot of encounters. So I think RS3 needs to do more of that. They need to keep doing what works well in old school, but in RS3, and really lean into their like surge and dive system, like they do with Karapak, like they do with Sanctum. So yeah, keep taking all of the good bosses from old school and using them. If I was gonna like take one boss specifically, I'd probably say something like Leviathan would work really well in RS3. I think that would be really really fun to see like an RS3 version of that. I just think all of the mechanics from Leviathan would work perfectly in RS3. Um, they could even add like a couple of extra things like stun mechanics or whatever in RS3, and that would work well.
Yeah, I dude,
In
the
terms,
entire Desert Treasure 2 stuff would be sick in RS3, I feel.
yeah, I think uh, those type of bosses where it's on hit work really well in RS3, right? Because you can't really take all of the stuff that's on cast, because that's not how RS3 works, right?
Exactly.
So a lot of content in old school wouldn't quite work in RS3, but I think yeah, Leviathan is genuinely like really fun, and especially when it gets like super fast paced and just
Yeah.
continuously like ramp like barrages you with all of the 3 different styles. I think stuff like that would be even more fun on RS3, where you can keybind your protection prayers and you could just easily flick and then like focus on doing X, Y, and Z other mechanic at the same time and not having to fight your interface. So they could make the boss fight even harder than what old school is. Like Awakened Leviathan, but on crack for RS3 would be really cool.
That would be sick.
And then the only other piece of content that I think old school could take from RS3 and do really, really well is Big Game Hunter.
Yes. I mean, without Surge and Dive, it would be a bit weird, but I think there is a way to integrate it into old school RuneScape and still make it just as awesome.
Well, you've got the tall grass and things like that. So
that's true.
Old school would just be in like a bit of a different way, and you'd make the ring like slightly smaller. But I think everything works. Like I don't see anything being not possible, because there was literally the task where it's like don't use any movement abilities and you can still get the big game hunts done. It's just a bit slower, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I feel like they could also add like another mechanic to maybe like find a cool niche way to speed it up too, like to keep it like fast paced and stuff. Because yeah, I agree with you.
You could get some like I think, sorry for cutting you off, but I think like if you have some resources, so it's like wood vine and then some magic stones that you mine, and then the magic stones can be used to make portals, and you can put them on different
that'd be really cool.
So then they stay for the whole time that you're doing the hunt before it goes into hiding. So then you just set up a couple of teleports so that you can bounce around.
That'd be really, really cool. Yeah, I would love that. I mean, yeah, Big Game Hunter is probably like if someone asks me what's a thing, just like an actual thing from RS3 that you'd want in OSRS, I'd say like Archaeology and Big Game Hunter. Like Big Game Hunter is so awesome.
Archaeology is good too.
Yeah, like you could say like, oh, Herbivore, but like that's just clicking green. Big Game Hunter is so sick. So yeah, I definitely echo that in regard to what kind of content I'd want to see ported. Yeah, great answers. Honestly, great answers. Is there anything else you want to add?
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, there we go. No, I very much appreciate you coming on. I think it was a great conversation. It was awesome to shoot ball about RuneScape 3 a little bit. Now that I'm a bit more familiar with the game and can talk about it in depth and stuff, it's fun to do that. It seems
like you had good fun with Leagues in general.
Yeah, I never even like fully asked you what you thought of Leagues, but like, yeah, I did. And I feel like I had fun in Leagues in the kinds of ways that maybe some people wouldn't as RuneScape 3 players, because I liked the full progression system that I got to experience, because it was my first time fully experiencing it. But for a RuneScape 3 player, you're like, I'm just doing what I did on my Iron Man, but slightly faster, like, so I kind of appreciated it in that way, because, man, it's a whole different conversation, but like, would region locking work in RuneScape 3? I don't know, but
yes,
yeah,
it'd be fine.
Oh, you think so?
Yeah, I mean, you just give the whole, because on old school, do you have Varrock unlocked at the start?
Yes.
You do, right? Yeah, you have like the whole of like, was that Mistfilin? Yeah, so just give the whole of Mistfilin to start, and then the rest is just down to the player, because Mistfilin has Goblins Dungeon 3. It has, the start of Archaeology. It has like all of the main stuff, the start of Necromancy. Like in Mistfilin in general, like everything's there. So you're not really locking yourself out of any content specifically, because you've already got all the content in the first area. But, maybe not all the methods, right? But you have all the content.
Oh, sure.
So then they could then just unlock some areas from there and it would work fine. I think it would actually be better, because the way points worked this time, I think they could work it better if they had it so it was like area locked. And I think the task could be made a bit better if it's area locked. So I think that could be a bit more enjoyable next time if they did area lock it. I think it could lead to some more interesting variations between people's gameplay and progression. Everyone doing kind of the same stuff was a little less fun, right?
Sure, I definitely agree with that part for 100%. And this is what I just want to quickly pitch something, okay, before we wrap this up. So something I had the idea for, because this version of RuneScape 3 Leagues had such a small amount of PVM tasks, and region locking it would, some arguably experience less PVM as well. So my idea was, if you region lock the RuneScape 3 Leagues, you kind of do what old school RuneScape did, where you create like echo variants of specific fights within the individual regions to give more incentives for people to approach those regions. But also, instead of just like making a harder version of an existing fight, my idea was to like RuneScape 3ify it and make them have infinite enrage scaling on top of new mechanics. So you give people more power in the next leagues, where the relics are actually good. Combat relics specifically are actually good and crazy and like nutty, like you saw in Old School. And then you give people an opportunity to actually like get tested with what they have, like how overpowered they are, right? Like you're going to be doing like 10,000% Dagannoth Kings with all kinds of cool new mechanics attached to that, not just like their existing ones. That would be kind of cool too, because that really taps into, I think, a spirit of RuneScape 3, which is like crazy power scaling on so many different things. And I feel like Leagues is a great opportunity to just do something as wacky as like, 8K Enrage Giant Mole. Who knows? It could be kind of funny.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah, stuff like that. Like Leagues is all for fun, so it was weird that they only made your character like 30% stronger with the God book, and then a little bit stronger with your relic. But like, you should be like 5 times as strong. You should be absolutely blasting through the content.
Like you're doing like 35 times. I think it was 35 deep. What is it? DPS with bronze darts in
that's crazy
in OSRS, right? Like with the range relic. So it's just like, come on.
Yeah, like it should be like that for sure. And if they don't reach unlock it and they were to like buff your characters really immensely, then add in stuff like enrage system on like every boss, so you can just go have fun everywhere. Would be
exactly
really cool.
that's my
then
tip.
Have like tasks to beat it up to a certain enrage on each boss. Like obviously, if it's infinite, then don't have the task go too crazy, but just have tasks to do enrage variants of like everything.
Yeah, like you could go because there's the items in RS3 are so insanely impactful. Like that's something I loved about getting some of the end game stuff, is that they are like really impactful, right? Like more so than the end game stuff in OSRS is, apart from maybe the mega rares. Because in OSRS is like, oh, the Ultra ring, you get 1 max hit. But in RuneScape 3, it's like you get the fucking Dingus Bingus ring and it's gonna fucking blow up on your target. It's like crazy. So like you could do some crazy stuff with that, right? Like imagine a hard mode, super hard mode enraged care pack that drops a version of the staff where the spec is just 100% active all the time. Like you can do some crazy stuff, with, and it probably doesn't take that much effort to like slightly modify and overpower certain items. Maybe the shards of Genesis are just random drops and they permanently just add a stacking damage buff to your existing item, so you could just permanently keep scaling up and up and up. You could do so much crazy stuff. Anyway, it's fun thinking about stuff like that, and I really hope they do run it back with Leagues. I really do hope so.
They definitely will. It was pretty successful.
Yeah, I hope so. Anyway, Maikeru, thank you so much for joining me. It was a great conversation. 2 hours and 40 minutes on the dot. Thank you. Thank you for chatting with me. If you ever want to come back, you're more than welcome to. And I'm sure we're going to have future great conversations like this. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's been good fun.